Chapter 99. At this moment, it suddenly started drizzling in the sky. The rain was sparse and scattered, creating a thin layer of mist. The Een wind hills are filled with Een fiendish wind all year round. Why is it raining? An assassin asked in confusion. A few experienced assassins felt their hearts tremble as they said, "He's here." "Who is he?" An assassin asked. Yiguchen's brows furrowed as he felt the sudden rain. The red-haired ghost and the other's expressions also changed slightly. A thin figure slowly walked out from the rain. He was dressed in black and wore a bamboo hat. Unlike the other assassins of Bloodthirst, he didn't like to wear masks. Instead, he covered his face with a bamboo hat and a black veil. "Yushicho?" Yiguchen's brows slowly furrowed. It hadn't been long since their last battle. Yiguchen naturally had a deep impression of Yushicho. This included his water sword intent. "Why do you have such an expression? We only sparred last time. I didn't kill you," Yushicho suddenly said when he sensed Yiguchen's gaze. "What? Yushicho has fought Sword Demon before?" The surrounding assassins looked at Yiguchen in shock. Yushicho was ranked 4th on the Heaven Pride ranking. He was also very famous in Bloodthirst. Although Sword Demon had made a name for himself in Bloodthirst, he could only be considered a newcomer. None of the assassins had expected Yiguchen to have fought Yushicho before. Moreover, from his tone, it was clear that he hadn't obtained an overwhelming advantage. This Sword Demon, the red-haired ghost, looked at Yiguchen with a grave expression. Nightingale was even more impressed with Yiguchen. "Is that so? Then I should thank you," Yiguchen sneered. If he didn't have so many trump cards and was just an ordinary chi refinement cultivator, he would have been turned into a bloody sieve by the rain of swords. Yushicho smiled faintly but didn't say anything. However, he no longer looked down on Yiguchen. Although Yiguchen hadn't comprehended any sword intent, Yushicho didn't dare to underestimate him due to his many trump cards. "You're also here for the Shura sword intent?" Yiguchen raised his brows. "Aren't you?" Yushicho's gaze darkened. The surrounding assassins all fell silent when they saw the two of them going head-to-head against each other. "Hee, interesting. But Yushicho, if you're here, can you remove the rain?" Just as the two of them were confronting each other, a giggle suddenly rang out, bringing with it a languid and charming feeling. Even though the assassins of the Bloodthirst Tower were cold-hearted people, their minds still shook slightly when they heard the misty voice. In the blink of an eye, a graceful figure appeared in the middle of the crowd. She was wearing tight black clothes that outlined her alluring curves. Although her face was covered with a black veil, it wasn't hard to imagine her seductive face under the veil. "Greetings, Judge Yu." Yushicho cupped his hands and waved, dispersing the rain. The surrounding assassins of the Shura's Shura also cupped their hands. The 4 judges of the Shura's Shura had extraordinary statuses. Each of them was a true expert. Although Yuli was the only woman among the 4 judges, she wasn't weak at all. "Alright, since everyone is here, let's open the 18 blood prison. I wonder if anyone can reach the last level and comprehend the Shura sword intent." Yuli's beautiful black eyes glanced in 2 directions. Yiguchen and Yushicho. If there was anyone who was most likely to obtain the Shura sword intent, it would be these 2. Rumble. Yuli took out a blood-colored token and activated it. The ground suddenly shook and a crack appeared. A pitch-black bottomless cave appeared. "Everyone can enter if they hand over a flying guillotine filled with blood essence," Yuli said. No one refused. Filling up a flying guillotine was to enter the 18 blood prison. All the assassins, including Yiguchen, entered the 18 blood prison after handing in their flying guillotines. Before entering, Yushicho glanced at Yiguchen and said, "The 18 blood prison. After the 8th level, every level is a test. All the way to the 17th level is called the Shura 9 refinements. I'm really curious. Which level will you reach?" "Shura 9 refinements?" Yiguchen was curious. But hearing the name, it wasn't easy to pass. But he wasn't afraid. The Shura sword intent. "I must get it," Yiguchen said and entered. Easy for you to say. The Shura 9 refinements. Anyone who can pass it is either a madman or a true genius. Yushicho sighed and entered as well. Because he had been here once, Yiguchin was familiar with the first 8 levels. Plus, his current strength was much stronger than before, so it was naturally easier for him to pass. Soon, Yiguchin broke through the 8th level and reached the 9th. But as soon as he stepped into the 9th level, Yiguchin felt the space distort and his consciousness turn upside down. When he opened his eyes again, there was a red veil in front of him. He was wearing a red robe, and beside him sat a beautiful woman wearing a veil. Another illusion. Yiguchin had long been used to it. The last time he entered the 8th level of the 18-blood prison, he experienced an illusion. But this time, the illusion seemed different. He thought for a moment and slowly reached out to remove the veil of the woman beside him, revealing a beautiful face. Yiguchin was slightly taken aback. Sidu Hongxue? Guchin were finally together. The Sidu Hongshuets in front of him looked at Yiguchin affectionately with her beautiful eyes. That kind of love was so soft that it couldn't be dissolved. Interesting. Yiguchin smiled. This illusion was getting more and more interesting. Guchin, what are you smiling about? Sidu Hongxue said coquettishly and lightly punched Yiguchin's chest. What surprised Yiguchin was that this illusion was incomparably real. In his mind, it really showed all the memories from when they met to when they got married. What kind of test is this illusion? Yiguchin was only puzzled about this point. After some time, they gave birth to a child. Guchin, what do you think we should name the child? Situ Hongxue looked at Yiguchin with her beautiful eyes, her eyes filled with happiness. Let's call him Yu. Let him be a person with no regrets in his life, Yiguchin said. On the day of Yiguchin's 100th birthday, the entire Ye house was bustling with noise and excitement. Everyone, including Yiguchin's parents, was extremely happy. Of course, these parents were imaginary. However, Yiguchin really did have such memories in his mind. Looking at his smiling wife and the adorable baby in her arms, and even his own parents, the entire Ye house was immersed in a joyous atmosphere. If it was anyone else, they would probably be immersed in such happiness. However, to Yiguchin, all of this was like the moon in the water. It was too unreal. Whether it was in his previous life or in this life, he had never experienced such a moment. Most of the time, he was alone, searching for the way of the sword. However, suddenly, the entire Ye house was filled with countless cries of agony. Yiguchin's expression froze. He realized that the faces of the guests were all distorted. They were constantly scratching their faces, leaving streaks of blood. Black blood flowed out of their eyes, noses, ears, and mouths. Poison. One of the guests opened his mouth and said in a hoarse voice. Immediately, he fell to the ground. His entire body was black and festering. Then, he turned into a puddle of rotten water. Chapter 100. What's going on? Most of the people on the ground were members of the Ye house. They were howling and crying in agony as they clawed at their faces. Their faces were covered in blood as they collapsed to the ground and turned into puddles of blood. Save your mother. A graceful woman reached out and grabbed Yiguchin's arm. Her entire body was beginning to fester and black blood was flowing out of her face. How could this be? Even with the sword demons in different nature, he was slightly shocked at the sight of such a tragic scene. No matter how much he tried to ignore it, the memories of this mother were still present in his mind. Even though he knew that it was an illusion, he still felt that it was incomparably real. Hee. Suddenly, Sid Hongxue, who was hugging Yi Wuk, let out a terrifying laugh. Hongxue? Yiguchin frowned. Hi, Yiguchin. No, I should call you the sword demon. To think that you would have such a day. Sidu Hongxue first suppressed her laughter, then laughed out loud, and finally laughed maniacally. Yiguchin clenched his fists slightly. Hongxue, what have you done? The Ye house has treated you well. Yiguchin's father was also lying on the ground in agony. He stretched out his withered and festering finger and pointed at Sidu Hongxue. What have I done? I merely added the 7 orifices intestines severing powder into your food. This poison will cause your body to fester inch by inch, causing you to suffer in agony before you die. Guchin, do you know why I didn't poison you? It's because I want you to watch the Ye house be annihilated. Sidhu Hongxue laughed maniacally. There was a kind of tragic beauty to her laughter. Why? Ye Guchen took a deep breath. Given his temperament, it was difficult for him to remain calm after experiencing such a thing. But because you, sword demon, once massacred my Situ family. I, Sidhu Hongxue, swore at that time that I would definitely take revenge on you. Therefore, I endured it and even wronged myself by marrying my enemy, all for the sake of waiting for this day. Sidhu Hongxue smiled very sickly. At the same time, she took out a dagger. What do you want to do? Ye Guchen's gaze wavered, but it didn't fluctuate too much. Even when his parents died in front of his eyes, he only felt a little uncomfortable. Because Ye Guchen knew that these were all illusions. What am I going to do? I want you to watch your child die with your own eyes. Sidhu Hongxue took out a dagger and stabbed the baby in her arms. Stop. Even if it was just an illusion, Ye Guchen could not sit idly by. He drew his sword and went straight for Sidhu Hongxue. Puchi. Ye Guchen's hand trembled slightly. Sidhu Hongxue smiled because she hugged the baby in her arms to her chest. Ye Guchen's sword pierced through both the baby and Sidhu Hongxue's chest at the same time. One was his blood relative, the other was his true love, and the ground was littered with corpses in the Ye house. If it were anyone else, they would not be able to accept such an unforeseen event. It was too sudden and too cruel. It was like falling from heaven to hell. Ye Guchen, this baby and I will become your inner demons for life. You must be in pain. Your heart must be bleeding. This is the price you have to pay. Sidhu Hongxue said with a smile as she spat out a mouthful of blood. Ye Guchen closed his eyes slightly. His sword-wielding hand was trembling. Sidhu Hongxue's beautiful face became even more distorted, as if she was enjoying Ye Guchen's struggle. However, after a long time, Ye Guchen's trembling hand calmed down. He slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were as calm as an ancient well, incomparably deep. The 18 blood prisons are indeed worthy of their reputation. The 9th level is indeed much more powerful than the 8th level, but if you want to stop me, it's still not enough. As soon as Ye Guchen finished speaking, he did not hesitate at all. He actually stabbed the sword even deeper. Then, with a swing of the sword, the child and Sidhu Hongxue's bodies were instantly torn apart. They turned into a rain of blood that filled the sky. A drop of red agate-like blood slowly fell from the sky. Ye Guchen reached out to catch it. Looking at this drop of blood, he murmured, "The blood of true love." The void shattered. The entire space shattered. The Ye house, the ground littered with corpses, everything disappeared. The 9th level passed. The 10th level. Ye Guchen also entered an illusion. This time, his identity was that of an older brother and a younger sister. The two of them had relied on each other for more than 10 years, struggling to survive. But in the end, this younger sister wanted to kill him. Ye Guchen's eyes were still cold as he pierced his sister's heart with his sword. Similarly, a drop of blood fell onto Ye Guchen's palm. The blood of true love. The 11th level was the same. The 12th level was the same. Ye Guchen finally understood what the Azura 9 refinements that Yu Shicho had mentioned before entering the 18 blood prisons was. It seemed that after the 8th level, every level was an illusion. Most importantly, these illusions were incomparably realistic and even contained complete memories. It was equivalent to a reincarnation. The Azura 9 refinements was an illusion of 9 lives. Most importantly, the 9 lives of these illusions were unbearable experiences for ordinary people. For example, in Ye Guchen's first life, he had directly killed Sidhu Hongxue and the baby in her arms with a single sword strike. Although he knew it was an illusion, it felt so real that it would be difficult for an ordinary person to distinguish between reality and illusion, let alone attack directly. This was a test of one's temperament. And Ye Guchen's temperament was the least tested. Just like his name, Ye Guchen was the heavenly baneful loner. Therefore, this experience, which was extremely tragic for ordinary people, did not pose much of a threat to Ye Guchen. Moreover, with every level, Ye Guchen would obtain a drop of blood. At the same time, the murderous aura on his body would become thicker. On the 13th level, Yiguchen's identity was that of a monk in a temple. In the end, he personally killed the abbot who treated him like his own son. A drop of golden blood slowly fell onto Yiguchen's palm. Buddha's blood. Yiguchen muttered. On the 14th level, Yiguchen became a sword cultivator who slaughtered his way into the abyss. However, the final fiend celestial was a beautiful woman who accompanied him all this time. Puchi. Yiguchen pierced her heart with his sword and obtained a drop of purple blood. Fiend's blood. On the 15th level, Yiguchen became a fey beast in human form. In the end, he slaughtered his way into the heavenly palace and killed an immortal. A drop of resplendent blood fell into his hand. Immortal's blood. On the 16th level, Yiguchen became a great general. He was trapped in a dangerous city with tens of thousands of people. Outside them were hundreds of thousands of enemy troops. General, what do? We can't hold on any longer. Yiguchen's trusted aide said through gritted teeth. Kill. Yiguchen donned his armor and charged into battle. He wielded his 3-foot-long sword and led tens of thousands of people to break out of the encirclement. That battle went on for an unknown period of time. Yiguchen did not know how many times he swung his sword. Blood splattered all over his body. Even the sword in his hand was chipped. In the end, Yiguchen relied on a sliver of will to kill his enemies. In the end, in the entire world, whether it was the hundreds of thousands of enemy troops or the tens of thousands of people on Yiguchen's side, they were all dead. The entire land was covered in blood. Blood stained the universe. The only one who was still alive was Yiguchen. The setting sun was as red as blood, illuminating the millions of corpses. Only Yiguchen was left. With one sword, the world fell silent. What is an Azura? Is this an Azura? Yiguchen slowly raised his hand. His entire body was shrouded in dense killing intent. A drop of blood fell into his palm. This is the blood of all living beings. The 16th level of the 18 blood prison was broken. Chapter 101. It could be said that what Yiguchen had experienced along the way was unbearable for ordinary people. He finally understood why the 18 blood prison became more and more dangerous the further he went. The danger was no longer purely physical damage, but the destruction of the soul and will. It could be said that in the illusions of his previous 8 lives, if Yiguchen did not pass any of them, he would stop. Others might choose to quit, but Yiguchen could not. In order to comprehend the Shura sword intent, he joined the bloodthirsty tower. In order to comprehend the Shura sword intent, his hands were stained with blood. In order to comprehend the Shura sword intent, he took part in the blood mission and even killed Situ Hongshue's brother in front of her. Yiguchen did not know if Situ Hongshue would take revenge on him like she did in the illusions when she learned that he was the bloodthirsty tower's sword demon. Yiguchen only knew that he must comprehend the Shura sword intent. Yiguchen slowly opened his hand. The 8 drops of blood in his palm were like water and oil, clearly separated. The blood of true love, the blood of relatives, the blood of brothers, the blood of compatriots, the blood of Buddha, the blood of demons, the blood of immortals, and the blood of all living beings. 8 lives of reincarnation, 8 drops of blood. If one looked at Yiguchen's eyes, they would find that they were covered with a thick layer of bloody light, and his body exuded an extremely cold, murderous aura. Ordinary cultivators in the Qi refinement realm would be so scared that their legs would go weak and their minds would tremble when they felt this murderous aura. Next is the 17th floor, Yiguchen murmured, his voice slightly hoarse. He directly entered the 17th floor of the 18 blood prison. The 17th floor was very quiet, and there was no illusion like Yiguchen had imagined. The surrounding heaven and earth seemed to be in the void, surrounded by darkness, as if they were in the midst of chaos. Not long after Yiguchen entered the 17th floor, a figure also appeared. Dressed in black and wearing a bamboo hat, it was Yu Shirsho. Yu Shirsho was also surrounded by an extremely dense killing intent. He looked at Yiguchen, and his eyes shone with a bloodthirsty light. Yiguchen's eyes flickered. Compared to him, Yu Shirsho seemed to be more affected by the bloodthirsty murderous aura. It looks like there are only the 2 of us left on this level. Yu Shirsho's voice was a little hoarse. His mental willpower had clearly been greatly tested. Are you going to attack? Yi Guchen's murderous aura was no weaker than Yu Shicho's. Haha, this trial is enough for us. Do we still have the energy to fight amongst ourselves? Yu Shicho sneered. Suddenly, it fogged up. White mist appeared out of nowhere and began to pervade the area. Yu Shicho and Yi Guchen's figures were instantly submerged in the fog. They couldn't see each other. Yi Guchen frowned slightly and looked around warily. The 17th floor of the 18-blood prison was obviously extremely dangerous. It wouldn't be easy to pass. Swoosh. Suddenly, a sword tore through the fog and came for the kill. Yi Guchen reacted quickly. He took out the calamity dust and collided with the sword. But at the moment of collision, Yi Guchen was stunned. Because the sword gave off a cold light. It had natural thunder patterns and 2 spiritual patterns inscribed on it. Yi Guchen couldn't be more familiar with this sword. It was the calamity dust sword. In the next moment, the fog in front of him was suddenly torn apart. A figure appeared in front of Yi Guchen's eyes. He was dressed in a black robe and had a slender figure. His eyes were as bright as stars and he had a handsome face. It was himself. This level of illusion actually created another self. Yi Guchen was slightly surprised. He used the Aurora Quicksword's little unique skill, Aurora's Passing Aurora. Opposite him, Yi Guchen also used the same little unique skill, Aurora's Passing Aurora. Clang. The 2 sword lights intersected with each other. Sword chi burst forth. I don't believe it. Could it be that you can completely copy me? Yi Guchen didn't believe it. Even if it was an illusion, there must be a flaw. He activated the golden sea of chi in his body and golden true chi gushed out. What shocked Yi Guchen was that the opposite Yi Guchen also surged with golden true chi. Yi Guchen struck with his sword. There was darkness behind him. Immediately, a sword light broke through the air as if dawn had arrived. Aurora Quicksword's ultimate move, Daylight Break. Yi Guchen, who was on the opposite side, also used the Daylight Break. Again. Yi Guchen changed his sword technique again. He used the Shadow Assassination Sword's little unique skill, Vanishing Shadow. On the other side, Yi Guchen's figure also pulled out a residual shadow and disappeared in an instant. Yi Guchen didn't believe it. With a flip of his left hand, the Meteorite Soft Sword appeared in his hand. With the Meteorite Soft Sword in his left hand, he used the ultimate move of the Piercing Moon Sword art, see Rising Bright Moon. With the Calamity Dust Sword in his right hand, he used the Boundless Heaven Sword art's little unique skill, Boundless Wheel. Yi Guchen used the most powerful moves with both hands. He hadn't used the dual sword divergence many times yet. But what shocked Yi Guchen was that the opposite Yi Guchen also used the dual sword divergence. Moreover, the moves were also see Rising Bright Moon and Boundless Wheel. Rumble. Heaven and earth rumbled. Due to the impact of the moves, the thick fog tumbled. Yi Guchen's body was hit by the strong recoil. He kept retreating. Even with his perfect body, he still suffered a lot of damage. Yi Guchen opposite him didn't seem to be in a good condition either. He was also injured. If that's the case, Yi Guchen's eyes narrowed slightly. Now, Yu Shicho should have encountered another version of himself. Therefore, Yi Guchen didn't have to worry about anything. He took a deep breath. If this move couldn't solve the problem, Yi Guchen could only accept his fate. Putting away the Meteorite Soft Sword, Yi Guchen held the Calamity Dust in his hand and used all his strength to activate the golden sea of chi in his body. Suddenly, a powerful and terrifying sword chi burst out from his body in all directions. Behind him, it slowly condensed into a pair of sword wings. This pair of sword wings was formed by endless sword chi. As it flapped slowly, it seemed to be able to destroy thousands of miles of the sky. First move of the 10,000 Gods Tribulation, destruction of heaven and earth. Yi Guchen used all his strength and tried to concentrate the power of the sword wings on the Calamity Dust. However, he still couldn't do it. The Calamity Dust sword trembled violently. The genuine chi in Yi Guchen's body was in a mess. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Boom. The incomplete version of the 10,000 deities tribulation was used again. Yi Guchen's golden sea of chi was rapidly depleted. However, the terrifying sword chi that could destroy heaven and earth tore through the endless fog and rushed towards Yi Guchen. However, what made Yiguchen's eyes freeze was that Yiguchen also used the 10,000 deities tribulation. Moreover, it seemed to be more perfect than Yiguchen's. Yiguchen suddenly understood. He had a deeper understanding of the 10,000 deities tribulation. However, this wasn't a good thing for him. Rumble. A wave of sword chi that could destroy the world suddenly erupted from the point of collision between the two Yiguchen. The surrounding void seemed to be torn apart. The powerful sword chi could probably kill a martial artist below the 5th transformation chi refining realm. After the powerful move, Yiguchen spat out a mouthful of blood and fell heavily to the ground. Yiguchen was in the same situation. He was severely injured. Is there no other way? Yiguchen gritted his teeth. Chapter 102. He couldn't accept it. He didn't believe it. He had been preparing for the Shura sword intent all this time. He was only one step away from obtaining it. However, Yiguchen's footsteps were blocked on the 17th floor. How can I defeat him? Yiguchen forced his weak body to sit cross-legged on the ground to recover. The 10,000 god tribulation consumed too much energy. Yiguchen's golden sea of chi was almost exhausted and he couldn't fight anymore. This was also why Yiguchen used it as his trump card. Although it was powerful, he wouldn't be able to fight again after one move. Opposite him, Yiguchen also sat on the ground to recover and didn't attack Yiguchen. Yiguchen understood that his opponent could even use the 10,000 god tribulation. Even if he used the spirit-devouring secret skill or the 3,000 sword souls, it would be useless. His opponent would use the same move. Yiguchen calmed down and began to think. The only person in the entire bloodthirsty tower who had passed the 18 blood prisons was the tower master. Since he could pass, it meant that there must be a way to break through the 17th floor. Yiguchen fell into deep thought. Shura sword intent, Shura sword intent? Yiguchen muttered to himself. Suddenly, a light flashed through his mind. He took out the 8 drops of blood that he had obtained from the 8 lives of reincarnation. Each drop was different in color, but they all exuded a shocking murderous aura. The 9 refinements of Shura, 9 lives of illusion. After each life, one can obtain a drop of blood after breaking through the illusion. However, there is no illusion here. No, if there is an illusion. Yiguchen suddenly looked at Yiguchen. Every life was a drop of blood. Blood of true love, blood of family, and so on. If there was only one drop left, then what was the last drop? What was Shura? Yiguchen pondered again. Slaying the heavens and destroying the earth was Shura. Slaughtering millions of corpses was Shura. Severing emotions and destroying Tao was Shura. Slaying immortals and slaughtering Buddhas was Shura. The final Ajura was to sever oneself. The Tao of self-severing is known as Ajura. Ha! Yiguchen looked up to the sky and laughed maniacally, like an old monk who had been meditating for 100 years. His eyes were bright like never before. He stood up and raised the Calamity Dust sword. This time, the sword was no longer pointed at Yiguchen but at himself. Puchi. Yiguchen held Jie Chen's sword hilt in a reverse grip and slashed open his abdomen. Fresh blood instantly flowed out. On the other side, Yiguchen's body suddenly trembled, as if a stone had been thrown into a calm lake. As expected, Yiguchen endured the pain in his body and swung his sword again. This time, the sword pierced through his left chest. On the other side, Yiguchen's body trembled again, and cracks began to appear on the surface of his body like porcelain. Again! Yiguchen's eyes flashed with flames. No martial artist with any sense would do such a self-harming action. But Yiguchen did it while he was extremely conscious. It could be seen that he had a terrifying and firm willpower. In my previous life, in order to attain the selfless sword Tao, I had to face the wall alone at the top of a mountain for more than 10 years. I was able to endure that kind of loneliness, so this physical pain is nothing. As long as I can comprehend the sword intent and help me reach the peak of the sword Tao, even if I have to die, I will not regret it. Yiguchen laughed heroically. He was the sword demon, the real Duguwubai. Sever one's self, become Ajura. Yiguchen's final sword pierced his left chest, where his heart was. If other places were injured, there was still a chance of recovery. But if the heart was pierced, there was no chance of survival. This was the determination of the sword demon, and also the sword sect. Puji. Jie Chen's sword pierced through Yi Guchen's chest and heart. Hot blood spurted out. At this moment, Yi Guchen's body suddenly shattered like glass, turning into specks of light and disappearing. Cough. Yi Guchen endured the intense pain and pulled out his sword. Puji. A drop of extremely pure blood flowed out and landed on Yi Guchen's palm. The 9th drop of blood, his own blood. At this moment, the surrounding dark void began to emit cracking sounds. Spatial cracks began to spread, and with a loud rumble, the void shattered. When Yi Guchen's vision recovered, he realized that he was in an ancient land. Just now, it was also an illusion. Yi Guchen was really surprised. He had thought that the illusion on the 17th level was Yi Guchen, but it was clear that he had fallen into an illusion the moment he stepped onto the 17th level. Even when he was talking to Yu Shicho, he was already talking in an illusion. Yi Guchen lowered his head and realized that the sword wounds on his abdomen and chest had already disappeared. His body was full of vital energy, and his body was perfect. There was not a trace of injury on him. The test of the 17th level is indeed extraordinary. A real illusion does not make one feel that it is an illusion. Yi Guchen sighed inwardly. He suddenly turned his head. Not far away, Yu Shicho, dressed in black, stood where he was. His face was sometimes shocked, sometimes twisted, and sometimes crazy. It was clear that he, like Yi Guchen, had fallen into a battle with him. But Yu Shicho had not found a way to break out of the illusion, which was to sever his own ego. After staring at him for a while, Yi Guchen shook his head and did not choose to make a move. First of all, although there was friction between him and Yu Shicho, it was not to the point of life and death. When they had fought earlier, Yu Shicho had not used his full strength. Second of all, this was the 18 blood prison. If Yi Guchen attacked him, Yuli might detect it. If she did, it would be a violation of the rules. It would be a capital offense. Yi Guchen did not need to do that. The most important thing right now was to comprehend the Shura sword will. As long as he comprehended the Shura sword will, even if he faced Yu Shicho, he would not have any fear. Yi Guchen walked on this ancient land. The ground was an ominous scarlet color, as if it was dyed with blood. Just as he was about to reach the end of the 17th level and see the bronze door of the 18th level, the ground suddenly shook violently. This is... Yi Guchen frowned. He realized that under his feet, lines of scarlet runes began to spread. They covered almost the entire ground. Then, an extremely dense scarlet light was emitted, and blood-red flying swords appeared from the activated formation. Yi Guchen realized that the blood-red flying swords were exactly the same as his little Ashura sword formation. But in terms of range and power, they were far superior to the little Ashura sword formation. This is a human-level superior grade sword formation. Yi Guchen's eyes were serious. Chapter 103. Yi Guchen was well aware of the power of formations. His little Ashura sword formation, a low-grade mortal rank, could trap and kill a divine soul realm expert. The high-grade mortal rank formation in front of him, if fully utilized, could even defeat a heaven and earth spirit bridge realm expert. Most importantly, Yi Guchen could feel that this formation was similar to his little Ashura sword formation. Yi Guchen even believed that the little Ashura sword formation was a simplified version of this formation. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Blood-red flying swords soared into the sky, and dense Ashura power filled the air. At a glance, there were a total of 108 blood-red flying swords. Yi Guchen's little Ashura sword formation only had 12 swords. In terms of power, this sword formation was far more powerful than the little Ashura sword formation. The blood-red flying swords seemed to have sensed something and shot toward Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen activated the golden sea of qi in his body, and 1,000 heaven-splitting sword souls broke out of his body. Like a flood of cyan sword qi, they collided with the 108 blood-red flying swords. But what shocked Yi Guchen was that the blood-red flying swords, which carried the powerful Ashura power, broke through the heaven-splitting sword souls. This was not because the heaven-splitting sword souls were not strong, but because Yi Guchen's cultivation was not enough to fully utilize their power. But the power of this sword formation could threaten a life-and-death realm expert. The two were not on the same level at all. Soul-devouring secret skill. Yiguchen did not dare to hold back. If he hesitated, he might really die here. Even the illusion had been broken. How could Yiguchen be willing to die here? With the expansion of the devouring power, Yiguchen's body seemed to have become a black hole that could devour everything. The power of heaven and earth in the surrounding void was sucked into Yiguchen's body. There was even the tyrannical power of Azura within it, but Yiguchen had a perfect body, and his strength was incomparable to before. The power of Azura, which he had found troublesome when subduing the little Ashura sword formation, no longer posed much of a threat to him. Yiguchen's aura rapidly rose. 7th cycle of Qi refining. 8th cycle of Qi refining. Yiguchen's aura gradually stabilized after reaching the peak of the 9th cycle of Qi refining. The divine soul realm was a big hurdle. It was related to the sea of consciousness and the soul. It was not easy to break through. Even with the spirit-devouring secret technique, it was still difficult to break through. Feeling the surging golden genuine Qi in his body, Yiguchen's eyes shone with disdain, releasing an astonishing divine light. Golden light radiated from the surface of his body. His perfect physical body and golden energy sea, which was hundreds of feet long, made his aura astonishing. Yiguchen held the falling star soft sword in his left hand and the calamity dust sword in his right. The two swords moved in different directions, and two sword beams slashed out. Rora Swift Sword's ultimate move, Daybreak. The ultimate move of the piercing moon swordsmanship, See Rising Bright Moon. Rumble. The powerful sword move collided with the blood-red flying swords, and an astonishing wave of energy burst out. However, there were too many flying swords. The 108 flying swords immediately split up and attacked Yiguchen from different directions. 3,000 heaven-splitting sword souls, go! Yiguchen activated the 3,000 sword souls in his body again. The green sword soul gushed out of his body like a geyser. The overwhelming power would make an ordinary cultivator in the Qi refining realm weak in the knees. Clang! A series of explosions rang out. The green sword soul collided with the blood-red flying swords and was quickly destroyed. After all, it was a superior-grade mortal rank sword formation. It was not something that 3,000 sword souls could resist. However, Yiguchen did not expect to use the 3,000 sword souls to resist the sword formation. He was only using them to buy time. Yiguchen wanted to break the sword formation in front of him like how he broke the little Ashura sword formation. However, the superior-grade mortal rank sword formation was far more complicated than the little Ashura sword formation. Even with Yiguchen's talent in sword principle, it was almost impossible for him to break the sword formation in a short period of time. After a series of collisions, Yiguchen vomited blood again. The aura in his body began to become unstable. Although the golden Qi sea was full of genuine Qi, it could not withstand long-term consumption. Sword vein go? Yiguchen activated the golden sword vein in his body again. The power of the sword move increased several times in an instant, and a dazzling sword light burst out. However, it was still not enough. The blood-red flying sword pierced through Yiguchen's shoulder, leaving a sword wound so deep that the bone could be seen. Yiguchen gritted his teeth and endured. Another sword pierced through Yiguchen's thigh and came out directly. Yiguchen's body suddenly became stiff. Yiguchen was blasted back again. Blood spurted out of his mouth, and even his broken organs could be vaguely seen. One must know that this was a sword formation that could trap and kill even a spiritual bridge of heaven and earth cultivator. With Yiguchen's 6th cycle of Qi refining cultivation, it was already a miracle that he could hold on for so long. I don't believe it. Yiguchen's eyes were extremely cold. Even if he was injured all over, he had no intention of giving up. However, at a certain moment, the 108 flying swords suddenly stopped. First, they stood still in the void. Then, as if they had been summoned, they gathered together uniformly. A dense blood-red light burst out, and the powerful Azura power surged in all directions like a wave. In the blood-red light, a blood-red figure appeared. It was a creature in armor, and its face was like an Asura demon. A bloodthirsty, evil, and bloody aura spread out with the appearance of the blood-red creature. This creature did not have a physical body, but was formed by the pure Asura power in the formation. This is the spirit of the formation. Yiguchen's eyes trembled. Although he was not proficient in formations, he had heard of the spirit of the formation. That was the spirit of the formation that could only be formed by an earth-level formation. An earth-level formation could trap and kill a cultivator who had crossed the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. For example, the North River Sword King was a cultivator who had crossed the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. Is there no hope left? Yiguchen dragged his broken body and laughed bitterly. If it was a mortal-level high-grade sword formation, Yiguchen could still hold on for a while. But for an earth-level sword formation, Yiguchen could not resist at all. The difference was too great. I am the Asura demon spirit. Those who trespass into the 6 Dao Asura sword formation will be killed without mercy. The blood-red Asura demon spirit spoke. Its voice was like a demon from hell, making one's scalp tingle. The 108 blood-red flying swords condensed into a huge blood-red sword covered with demonic runes. Held in the Asura demon spirit's hand, it then slashed at Yiguchen. With one slash, heaven and earth were shocked. The entire space seemed to be surging with waves of blood. With such a powerful slash, not to mention Yiguchen, even Patriarch Situ and the demon judge, who had crossed the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth, would be killed by this slash. But would Yiguchen just sit there and wait for death? Little Asura sword formation, 6 Dao Asura sword formation, Asura sword intent, and the 9 drops of blood in the 9 lives illusion. Could it be, the huge blood-red sword was about to slash at Yiguchen, and Yiguchen could even feel a prickling pain on his scalp. In the next moment, Yiguchen's eyes suddenly lit up, and a dazzling divine light burst out. Chapter 104. Yiguchen immediately took out the 9 drops of blood that he had obtained from the 9 lives fantasy and swallowed them. The blood of true love, the blood of family, the blood of brothers, the blood of compatriots, the blood of Buddha, the blood of demons, the blood of immortals, the blood of all living beings, and his own blood. Boom! The moment Yiguchen swallowed the 9 drops of blood, he felt as if his entire body was about to explode. The powerful murderous aura was like a ferocious beast, rampaging through Yiguchen's meridians and internal organs. At the same time, the bloody scenes of the 9 lives reincarnation were reflected in Yiguchen's consciousness, flashing like a slideshow. Such a collision of consciousness was enough to cause a person's consciousness to collapse. However, Yiguchen's mental fortitude was so strong that he was not afraid of such an impact at all. At this moment, Yiguchen's entire body was emitting a strong murderous aura. He took out the little Asura sword formation again, this time with himself as the center. The blood-red giant sword that was about to slash down suddenly stopped. The entire sword formation of the 6 paths of Asura fell into an eerie silence. Asura, sword intent. The Asura demon spirit let out intermittent sounds, then its blood-red body dissipated. Just as I thought. Although his physical body and consciousness were in endless pain, the corners of Yiguchen's mouth still curled into a smile. Fusing with the 9 drops of blood, comprehending the 9 lives Asura sword intent, and using the little Asura sword formation as the catalyst, turning myself into the eye of the formation. The formation spirit naturally won't attack the eye of the formation. Yiguchen had made the right bet. He had always guessed that the 6 paths Asura sword formation must be related to the Asura sword intent. It wasn't until the moment of his death that he had a flash of inspiration and figured it out. Next, it's time to comprehend the Asura sword intent. Yiguchen's eyes shone brightly. He had been waiting for this moment for too long. He sat cross-legged in the center of the 6 paths Asura sword formation, becoming the eye of the formation. The power of Asura in the 6 paths Asura sword formation gathered toward Yiguchen's body. Yiguchen's body was like the eye of a storm, crazily absorbing the power of Asura. Even with Yiguchen's perfect body, it was difficult for him to digest such a vast amount of Asura power. Not only was Yiguchen's body withstanding the power of Asura, but his will was also undergoing an inhuman test. Countless grotesque and bloody illusions were rolling in Yiguchen's mind like nightmares. If he had a weak will, he would have become a delirious lunatic. Even Ashura's Ashura sword formation, shrouded in his body. As time passed, Yiguchen's body was surrounded by the power of Ashura, which was like a bloody waterfall. His eyes, which were as black as stars, were also covered with a layer of bloodthirsty light. If there was a slight mistake, Yiguchen would be eroded by the Ashura sword intent and become a lunatic who only knew how to kill. The so-called sword intent is a person controlling a sword, not a sword controlling a person. The Ashura sword intent wants to erode my mind? You're too naive. Yiguchen clenched his teeth, biting his lips until they bled. If it was Yiguchen in the past, it would be hard to say. But now, it was the soul of the sword demon, Dugubai. After 40 years in the Jianghu, who could defeat him? Although the Ashura sword intent was strong, how could the sword demon, who could even control the strongest selfless sword principle, be affected by the sword intent? Yiguchen's aura fell silent again. Obviously, to completely comprehend and control the Ashura sword intent was not something that could be done in a short period of time. At this moment, outside the 18-blood prison, there were some figures waiting. These were the assassins who had been sent out from the 18-blood prison. And only a portion of them had been sent out. The rest would forever remain inside. Among this group of people, there was naturally Nightingale and red-haired Ghost. But their auras and spirits looked a little dispirited. It was obvious that they had been greatly exhausted in the illusion. Yuli stared at the entrance of the 18-blood prison with an inexplicable gaze. So many days had passed, but only 2 people had not come out. If it was said that they perished inside, Yuli absolutely did not believe it. There was only one reason left. Could it be that after so long, besides the Tower Master, there is finally someone else who can comprehend the Ashura sword intent again? Yuli muttered to herself. Just as this thought flashed through Yuli's mind, a figure suddenly appeared at the entrance of the 18-blood prison. Yuli, Nightingale, red-haired Ghost, and the rest of the bloodthirsty tower all turned their gazes in unison. This person was Yu Shicho. Yu Shicho was panting heavily. His eyes were covered with a layer of blood-red light, as if he was still trapped in a nightmare. Are you all right? Yuli flashed over and patted Yu Shicho's back. She instilled her vital energy into him and calmed him down. After Yu Shicho regained his composure, his expression was a little ugly. At the same time, he realized that Yiguchen had not come out yet. It's Yu Shicho. It seems that he has failed. Then there is only one person left in the 18-blood prison. Could the sword demon really? Some of the bloodthirsty tower assassins looked at each other, faintly shocked. If Yiguchen could really comprehend the Ashura sword intent, then his status in the bloodthirsty tower would not be ordinary. Perhaps he would really be appreciated by the mysterious Tower Master. The sword demon. Impossible, absolutely impossible. How could the Ashura sword intent be so easy to comprehend? Red-haired Ghost's expression was also ugly. Although he did not want to believe it, there was a faint sense of helplessness in his heart. Just as Yiguchen was comprehending the Ashura sword intent in the 17th layer of the 18-blood prison, a strange thing happened in the Milky Way province's Shang River City. What's going on? It's actually snowing? Snowflakes drifted down from the sky around the Xia family's residence, one of the 5 great families of the Milky Way province. Strange, why is it only snowing around the Xia family's residence? A few passers-by were puzzled. Just as the snowflakes drifted down, some of the residences of the 5 great families in Shang River City were in an uproar. What a mysterious power. It can actually cause the world to change? Although it's limited to the Xia family's residence, it's still extremely terrifying to be able to cause such a phenomenon. Who is it? Could it be that the Xia family's ancestor has broken through? No, this power is sword intent. It's the Xia family's genius, Xia Yubing. Although the Xia family's genius has obtained the North River Sword King's inheritance and possesses sword intent, it's still a little terrifying to be able to cause such a phenomenon. Xia Yubing's sword intent has already been comprehended to such a deep level. In one of the residences of the Song family, Song Daojun stood with his hands behind his back as he gazed into the distance. In the Xia family's residence, snow drifted down from the sky as if it was winter. That sword intent made Song Daojun and the other geniuses feel that it was difficult to resist. Slowly suppressing the feeling of helplessness in his heart, Song Daojun became somewhat curious. He knew of the grudge between Xia Yubing and Yi Guchen. In their previous exchange, Yi Guchen also gave him an unfathomable feeling. Although Yi Guchen might have many trump cards, Xia Yubing's sword intent alone is enough to crush him. Song Daojun sighed. For a swordsman, having sword intent and not having sword intent were two completely different concepts when their cultivation realms were about the same. Chapter 105. Within the Xia family's residence, the focus of many gazes in Shanghai City. A blue-clothed girl danced with her sword in the wind and snow. Her ice-blue hair fluttered in the wind, every strand of her hair sparkling. A pair of equally beautiful icy blue eyes, with a piercingly cold sword intent. As she danced with the glacier sword in her hand, the wind and snow seemed to become even colder. The frosty true qi emitted from her delicate body had already reached the 9th cycle of qi refinement. This cultivation speed had already surpassed Song Daojun and the other geniuses of the Milky Way prefecture. She could be said to be outstanding. She swung her sword, releasing a vigorous and biting cold sword intent. It actually completely froze the small lake beside her, like a mirror of ice and snow. My comprehension of the ice sword intent has reached a new level. Although it hasn't transformed into the way of the sword, it's only a step away. In this 10 prefectures elite gathering, I will sweep away all my enemies and look down on the dynasty. Although Xia Yubing was a girl, she was extremely ambitious. For this, she didn't even hesitate to betray her childhood friend, Yi Guchen, in order to rise above others. She had had enough of the misery of standing behind others in a dull and gloomy manner. Yi Guchen, although you've recultivated and made a name for yourself in the Beichen prefecture, what use is that? For sword cultivators, sword intent is their true trump card. You don't have sword intent, so you're destined to be trampled under my feet. After this 10 prefectures elite gathering, the name of the sword master will no longer exist. Xia Yubing's lips curled into a cold smile, just like the wind and snow in the sky. What happened in Shanghai City spread through the entire Milky Way prefecture at an extremely fast speed. Accompanying the news was a sentence from Xia Yubing. After the 10 prefectures elite gathering, the famous name of the sword master Yi Guchen will no longer exist. This could be said to have caused many waves. Xia Yubing's strength was needless to say, and Yi Guchen, the once dim sword master, seemed to be showing signs of rising. Many people were looking forward to how the sword master Yi Guchen would express himself. But to the disappointment of those people, Yi Guchen didn't stand up to confront Xia Yubing. It was as if he had disappeared without a trace. This made people wonder if Yi Guchen was cowering and trying to avoid the battle. There were also some who said that Yi Guchen was cultivating in seclusion, waiting for the 10 prefectures elite competition to shock everyone. However, the majority of the people were still not optimistic about Yi Guchen's chances. Although he had recultivated, there was still a huge gap between him and Xia Yubing, who had the inheritance of the North River Sword King. Just the sword intent alone was an irreparable gap. Moreover, as the 10 prefectures elite meeting approached, not only did the Milky Way prefecture receive a lot of news, but the other 9 prefectures also received news one after another. I heard that St. Yuan Mansion's imperial family's genius sword cultivator, Yuan Mie, is about to come out of seclusion. He will also be participating in the 10 Mansions elite meeting. Prince Yuanyi will also participate. I heard that the North Star Mansion's #1 Heaven Pride, Murong Ditian, has also broken through to the 9th cycle of qi refining. His strength has greatly increased, and I'm afraid that he might be able to compete for first place. What? Do you know about the great desolate prefecture's Shinto family? Their clan's Heaven Pride, Blade Maniac Shinto Miao, is ranked 3rd on the St. Yuan Heaven Pride list. I heard that he has already been decided to become a disciple of the Blade Conferring King's Palace. Perhaps he will be able to enter the Heavenly Saber list once he enters the Blade Conferring King's Palace. News of various geniuses spread in every prefecture. Evidently, the 10 prefectures elite meeting would be a grand event for the entire St. Yuan Empire's 10 great prefectures. A gathering of geniuses was a gathering of heroes. Only the true geniuses could stand out from the crowd and gain the favor of the 7 major forces. While the outside world was in an uproar because of the 10 prefectures elite meeting, Yiguchen finally made a move in the 18-blood prison of the Wind Hills. Yiguchen was seated at the center of the 6 Paths Azura sword formation. However, the strange thing was that the runes on the ground seemed to be alive as they gathered towards Yiguchen's body. In other words, the runes of the entire 6 Paths Azura sword formation had been transferred to Yiguchen's body. At this moment, Yiguchen looked a little strange. Blood-red runes swirled around his entire body. As the runes flashed with red light, Yiguchen looked like a demon king from hell. At the same time, vigorous Azura power gathered and condensed within Yiguchen's body. Finally, at a certain moment, Yiguchen, who had been seated for a long time, slowly opened his eyes. What kind of eyes were those? Cold, emotionless, bloodthirsty, just like a demon king from hell, an Azura from the end of the world. He slowly stood up and raised a hand. He did not use any weapon, but purely activated the Azura power in his body. In an instant, a terrifying sword intent swept out. The surrounding ground was torn apart, and a bloody wind swept out. The heavens trembled. Boom! A blood-red sword aura gushed out from his hand. He waved his hand. He did not use a sword, nor did he use any sword moves. He only used the Azura power to activate a trace of the Azura sword intent. When the sword was unleashed, the blood-red sword aura seemed to be unstoppable. It tore apart the ground, creating a huge ravine that was 1,000 feet long and 30 feet deep. One had to know that this was just a casual wave of Yiguchen's hand. Is this the power of the Azura sword intent? Yiguchen muttered as he felt the sword intent that could destroy everything in his body. Yiguchen lowered his head slightly and discovered that many runes were flickering on the surface of his body. Those were the runes of the 6 Paths Azura sword formation. Could it be that because I became the eye of the formation, the 6 Paths Azura sword formation used my body as a medium and transferred to me? Yiguchen watched silently. After organizing his thoughts, Yiguchen revealed a smile. His preparations had not been in vain. First, he had truly understood the Azura sword intent. In other words, he could use the power of the sword intent. Of course, if he wanted to transform the sword intent into the way of the sword, he still had a long way to go. However, being able to control the power of the Azura sword intent had already made him far superior to the average prodigy. The Azura sword intent focused on killing and was extremely powerful. In terms of pure offensive power, it definitely surpassed Yu Shicho's water sword intent. As Yiguchen's understanding of the Azura sword intent deepened in the future, he would be able to comprehend and use more moves. The Azura sword intent was not just a type of sword intent. It was a type of ability. In addition, the Earth-level formation, the 6 Paths Azura sword formation, had already been integrated into Yiguchen's body. The little Azura sword formation had already merged with the 6 Paths Azura sword formation. However, what made Yiguchen smile bitterly was that with his current cultivation level, it was completely impossible for him to activate the 6 Paths Azura sword formation. If Yiguchen could just barely activate the little Azura sword formation, then Yiguchen could forget about activating the 6 Paths Azura sword formation. It was like asking a baby to push a millstone. How could it possibly move? But just because I can't do it now doesn't mean I can't do it in the future, Yiguchen calculated. The blood-red runes flowing on the surface of his body quietly dissipated their light. In the end, they completely disappeared under Yiguchen's skin. Xia Yubing, when I left the Xia family, you said that if you used your sword intent, I would definitely die. Now, we are finally standing at the same starting point, so Yiguchen's eyes were suffused with a faint blood-red light. After delaying for so long, it's time to get rid of this obstacle. Chapter 106. Even if Xia Yubing had obtained the North River Sword King's inheritance, even if she had been in secluded cultivation for such a long time, Yiguchen was also confident that during the 10 prefectures elite gathering, He would be able to completely crush the pride that Xia Yubing had obtained through dirty means. After obtaining the Shura sword intent, the only thing that Yi Guchen felt was a pity was that he didn't have a sword art that was compatible with the Shura sword intent. The Shura sword intent focused on blood, killing, and destruction. Among the sword arts he was currently practicing, there wasn't one that was compatible with this attribute. Of course, with the sword demon's comprehension, he could integrate the Shura sword intent into any sword art. But sword arts that were compatible with the attribute were naturally more powerful. It seems that I have to pay attention to sword arts in this area in the future, Yi Guchen thought. Currently, Xiantian sword arts were of little value to him. Only spirit-level sword arts and above were useful. It wasn't that Yi Guchen looked down on ordinary sword arts. He could even practice the piercing moon sword art, so how could he look down on other sword arts? It was just that the higher the level of the sword art, the more difficult it was. For Yi Guchen, it was more interesting to challenge. It said that one has to pass through the 18th level to obtain the Shura sword intent. But I obtained it on the 17th level. What's the next level? Yi Guchen was very curious. Because the flying guillotine could only enter once after being filled with essence blood, it would be emptied afterward. So Yi Guchen estimated that it would be a long time before he could enter again. Moreover, Yi Guchen had already obtained the Shura sword intent. The 18 blood prison was no longer attractive to him, so Yi Guchen wouldn't take the initiative to accept missions. Because of all these reasons, Yi Guchen didn't hesitate and directly entered the last level of the 18 blood prison. Out of Yi Guchen's expectations, the last level of the 18 blood prison didn't have any strange scenes. There weren't any mountains of corpses, seas of blood, or illusions. What entered his eyes was a thatched cottage, a bamboo forest, and a lake. Yi Guchen's eyes were slightly shaken. The thatched cottage and the bamboo forest. Although it was strange that they appeared here, it wasn't to the extent that Yi Guchen's mind was shaken. What shocked him was the lake. There were countless swords floating around the lakeside and in the lake. Yi Guchen was very familiar with those swords. They were the flying guillotine. As for the lake, it was a blood-red lake that was completely formed from blood essence. This is actually like this? Yi Guchen took a deep breath. He had always had a question in his heart. Why was it that the condition to enter the 18 blood prison was to fill the flying guillotine with the essence of one's heart? Yi Guchen did not understand the use of the heart blood essence. But now he understood. It was just that the scene in front of him was a little shocking. It was a lake formed by a drop of blood essence in a human heart. Even with Yi Guchen's indifferent nature, he felt his scalp tingle as he looked at the blood-colored lakeside. How many lives did it take to form this essence blood lake? At this moment, Yi Guchen finally understood why the blood listening tower was so infamous in the Saint Origin Empire. It was because of the countless lives that had been lost. At this moment, Yi Guchen's sharp eyes suddenly noticed a small stone platform in the middle of the blood-colored lake. On the stone platform, a figure was lying quietly. What is that? Yi Guchen was on guard as he slowly approached. As he approached the blood-colored lake, a thick and nauseating smell of blood assaulted his nose. At the same time, there seemed to be countless people's grievances and wails, affecting one's mind. Yi Guchen frowned slightly. After comprehending the Azura sword intent, these things had no effect on him. As he approached, Yi Guchen's eyes revealed a look of surprise. That figure made him feel very surprised. It was a girl who looked no more than 10 years old. The girl was dressed in a white robe that resembled a cicada's wings. Her skin was as white as snow. She had long silver-white hair and a cute face. Her eyes were closed, and her eyelashes were long and curly. Her nose and mouth were delicate and pretty. It could be said that she was a lovely girl at first glance. But appearing in the blood-colored lake at the bottom of the 18 blood prison was absolutely abnormal. Most importantly, Yi Guchen sensed a familiar wave of energy from the girl. The Azura sword intent. Could she be the blood-listening tower master? Yi Guchen couldn't help guessing. It was rumored that only the blood-listening tower master had passed through the 18 blood prison. But the girl in front of him didn't look like the blood-listening tower master. Although Yi Guchen had never seen the blood-listening tower master before, When he met the blood-listening tower vice master, the broken sword old man, the blood-listening tower master had used a wisp of flute music to contain sword intent. That sword intent was melancholic, sorrowful, and emotional, as if it was from someone who had experienced the vicissitudes of life. It wasn't something the girl in front of him could comprehend. Moreover, when Yiguchen carefully sensed the girl's condition, he was shocked to discover that there was another sword intent fluctuation on the girl's body besides the Azura sword intent. The girl actually had two sword intents on her body. Even with Yiguchen's composure, he couldn't conceal his astonishment. He had gone through many hardships to comprehend the Azura sword intent, but the girl lying in the blood lake didn't just have the Azura sword intent, she also had another sword intent. That sword intent emitted a deathly stillness and a fluctuation of extinction. Could it be that the blood-listening tower collects flying guillotines to maintain the essence blood lake, and this lake is clearly the girl's cultivation area? Yiguchen was more and more puzzled. The girl's identity was also very suspicious. The blood-listening tower master. Not to mention outsiders, even within the blood-listening tower, few have seen her before. Yiguchen pondered. But no matter what, I've already obtained the Azura sword intent, so I don't need to meddle in other people's business. Although he was puzzled, Yiguchen wasn't a stubborn person who wanted to get to the bottom of things. Just as Yiguchen was about to turn around and leave, the girl who had fainted on the stone platform suddenly let out a painful moan. Yiguchen discovered that the blood aura in the blood lake, as well as resentment, had all poured into the girl's body. The girl relied on the essence blood lake to cultivate, but it was obvious that something had happened. Could it be that she's cultivated to the point of chi deviation? Yiguchen thought. That was indeed a possibility, but he didn't intend to get involved. After merging with the Azura sword intent, Yiguchen's character seemed to have become more indifferent. Ugh, the unconscious girl frowned, looking delicate and pitiful. Her body was suffused with a bloody light, carrying an extremely heavy smell of blood. At the same time, the Azura power in her body was rampaging. Yiguchen paused his steps. It wasn't because of his benevolence, but because he discovered that the blood lake should be very beneficial for cultivating the Azura sword intent. After the sword intent was the sword Dao. Xia Yubing had grasped the sword intent for so long, so she must have comprehended it to an extremely deep level. Although Yiguchen had grasped the Azura sword intent, it was only a preliminary grasp. He needed to comprehend the Azura sword intent to make it even more powerful. Therefore, Yiguchen planned to cultivate in the blood lake. Of course, as a condition, he wouldn't abandon the girl. Chapter 107. After making up his mind, Yiguchen didn't hesitate. Like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the blood lake, he landed next to the girl. Upon closer inspection, this little girl appeared even more charming. Her head of long silver hair set off her lustrous white and delicate jade face. Anyone who saw her would feel pity for her. However, Yiguchen didn't have such superfluous feelings. Attaining two sword intents at such a young age was a little abnormal. Most importantly, Yiguchen couldn't sense the girl's cultivation. Her body was like a bottomless pit. It should be noted that even Ancestor Situ and the demon magistrate, who were at the level of spirit bridge of heaven and earth, could feel the pressure of that realm. But apart from the two sword intents, there wasn't the slightest fluctuation on the girl's body. The first possibility was that the girl was an ordinary person, but that was obviously impossible. The second was that the girl's cultivation had surpassed Yiguchen's understanding, which also made Yiguchen feel incredulous. Could it be that her power has been sealed by something? But who would be so free as to seal this girl in the lowest level of the blood prison? Could it be the Bloodhark House Master? What? Yiguchen's doubts grew. But he didn't think too much about it. He picked up the girl with both hands. The girl's body was light and soft like cotton. Her silver hair was as smooth as silk, and her skin was as delicate as jade. Even someone as unromantic as Yiguchen couldn't help but sigh inwardly. When this girl grew up, she would definitely bring disaster to the country and its people. Yiguchen placed the girl by the lake and used his Azura power to guide the rampaging Azura power in her body. In the end, the girl's brows finally relaxed, and a peaceful smile unconsciously appeared at the corners of her mouth. But she still hadn't woken up. Yiguchen wasn't in a hurry. Saving the girl was just a matter of convenience. What he needed was cultivation. He leaped and landed on the stone platform in the center of the blood lake. After sitting cross-legged and meditating, Yiguchen directly released the Shura sword intent. Waves of blood-red sword intent spread out like blood-red ripples towards the lake. As if it had triggered some kind of resonance, the entire blood-colored lake surged with blood-colored waves. Streams of dense blood essence transformed into torrents, bombarding Yiguchen's body. Yiguchen suddenly activated the heavenly sun Xianming fire in his body. Flames surged out and wrapped around his body. These bloody torrents were formed from the essence blood of countless hearts. They were one of the most essential parts of a martial artist. However, he couldn't just casually absorb it. Although the power of Azura could purify blood essence, it was a bit slow. Yiguchen, on the other hand, used the most domineering method. He directly used the unique flames of heaven and earth to refine it, burning away all impurities and leaving behind only the purest energy. Of course, during the refining process, although waves of blood-colored energy were absorbed by Yiguchen, at the same time, the resentment eroded Yiguchen's spirit and will. Presumably, part of the reason why the girl fainted here was because of the impact of the resentment. This resentment couldn't be underestimated. It was the resentment of countless vengeful spirits before they died, and it gathered in the blood essence. The impact of this resentment was enough to collapse the sea of consciousness of a divine soul realm expert. However, Yiguchen had experienced the trial of 9 lives of the illusion. Coupled with the soul of the sword demon, this impact didn't cause any serious damage to him, even though it was pressuring. Most importantly, Yiguchen was comprehending the Shura sword intent at the same time as he absorbed the power of the blood essence. That resentment and pain were also resources to comprehend the Shura sword intent. In the blink of an eye, another few days passed. At this moment, the amount of blood essence in the blood-colored lake was 1/3 less than a few days ago. This was already an extremely terrifying amount. With the support of this power, Yiguchen also made a small breakthrough in his realm, reaching the 7th refinement chi refinement realm. This was already considered to be one of the best among the geniuses. Of course, it wasn't the best. However, the most important thing in this cultivation was not the cultivation realm, but the Shura sword intent. Yiguchen, who was sitting cross-legged, suddenly opened his eyes. They weren't as black as usual, but a pair of blood-red eyes that seemed to have been quenched in blood. Anyone who looked into these blood-red eyes would feel a chill in their heart. It was a kind of impact that was close to the soul. At the same time, with the support of these blood-red eyes, the scene in front of Yiguchen seemed to have slowed down. The waves on the lake and the drops of blood essence seemed to be moving in slow motion. The eyes of Azura. This was the result of Yiguchen's cultivation over the past few days. The first ability of the eyes of Azura was to intimidate the enemy. Some weaker cultivators would even be scared out of their wits and lose the will to fight. If Yiguchen entered the divine soul realm, the eyes of Azura would be able to directly release a soul attack to attack the enemy's sea of consciousness. The second ability of the eyes of Azura was to slow down everything in front of him. In other words, some sword moves, afterimages, and superficial illusions could be seen clearly by Yiguchen and broken through. Moreover, the speed of his sword would be faster and more accurate, as expected of the Shura sword intent. I've only comprehended a small part of it, and I've already obtained the eyes of Azura. If I continue to comprehend it, who knows what surprises await me? Yiguchen couldn't help but think. The feeling of increasing one's strength through this method was truly wonderful. He even wanted to fight Yu Shicho again right now. Just as Yiguchen's thoughts were running wild, a moan suddenly sounded. Yiguchen turned his head to see that the silver-haired girl had awoken. She was rubbing her eyes with her small hands. Yiguchen instantly became alert. He focused his attention and looked at the girl. He wasn't stupid enough to believe that this silver-haired girl was truly harmless. The girl seemed to notice Yiguchen as well. She blinked her large eyes. But within those lustrous eyes were blood-red pupils. Eyes of Azura. The corners of Yi Guchen's eyes twitched. The silver-haired girl had also comprehended the eyes of Azura. In the instant that their gazes met, a powerful soul resentment attacked Yi Guchen's mind. Yi Guchen instantly felt countless bloody and cruel images flash through his mind. Fortunately, he was somewhat immune to these illusions. At the same time, he used the eyes of Azura to counteract it. Big brother, your eyes are the same as mine." The silver-haired girl seemed to have found a companion. She revealed a brilliant smile. But the combination of the eyes of Azura and that jade-like smile seemed to be incompatible. "Can you disperse the eyes of Azura?" Yi Guchen's body was like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water as he landed on the lakeside. "Oh, big brother, I'm sorry. Shui didn't mean to glare at you." The silver-haired girl named Shui twisted her fingers. "Why are you here? And why do you have dual sword intent?" Yi Guchen asked seriously. "Sword intent? What sword intent? I don't know. Also, where is this place?" Shui doesn't know. Shuen is very hungry. Shui rubbed her stomach. Was she pretending, or did she really not know? Yi Guchen thought to himself. But he still took out some rations from his origin ring. Although he had pills like fasting pills, Yi Guchen still liked to eat rations and meat sometimes. Chapter 108. Shuen beautiful eyes widened when she saw Yi Guchen take out the dried food and meat. Her cherry lips parted slightly, drool dripping from the corner of her mouth. Her appearance was as if she hadn't seen dried meat for several lifetimes, looking extremely adorable. Yi Guchen passed the dried meat to Shuen. Shui stole a glance at Yi Guchen. Seeing that Yi Guchen didn't emit any dangerous aura, she stretched out her small hands and took the dried meat. Then she ate it at a speed that even Yi Guchen found unbelievable. Smacking her cherry lips, Shui once again looked pitifully at Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen sighed and took out another big piece of dried meat. Finally, after a quarter of an hour, Yi Guchen's origin ring was almost empty. Shui finally patted her little tummy and smiled contentedly. During this time, Yi Guchen had asked her a few questions, but Shuen didn't know anything. She was even confused about the dual sword intent in her body, not to mention controlling it. Yi Guchen also gave up on probing. "Since this matter is settled, I'll take my leave first," Yi Guchen said. His Azura sword intent had improved by another step. There was no point in continuing to stay here. The 10 prefectures elite gathering was approaching. Yi Guchen couldn't waste any more time. "Big brother, are you going to leave by yourself? Are you leaving Shui here alone?" Seeing that Yi Guchen was about to leave, Shui's heart tightened. She was like a newborn cub. The first thing she saw when she opened her eyes was Yi Guchen. In addition, Yi Guchen gave her food, so she instinctively wanted to get close to him. "You were originally going to stay here." Toward Shui, although Yi Guchen was calm on the surface, there was always a trace of vigilance hidden in his heart. He didn't think that Shui was really just an ordinary little girl. Facing such an unknown variable, Yi Guchen was still vigilant. Hearing Yi Guchen's words, Shuen's bright eyes were covered with a layer of mist. She pouted, looking at Yi Guchen pitifully. "Even if you look at me like this, it's useless." Yi Guchen turned to leave. Shuen reached out her small hands, tightly clutching Yi Guchen's sleeves. "Big brother, can you take me with you? Shui doesn't want to stay in this scary place." Shui's voice was weak, pleading. Ye's brows slightly. After a long while, Yi Guchen slowly shook his head and sighed. Tears the size of soybeans flowed out of the corners of Snow's eyes. "Come with me." Yi Guchen sighed. Shui's was. Yi Guchen naturally wasn't being kind. In fact, he was interested in the dual sword intent in Shui's body. Clearly, the Shura sword intent in Shui's body was at a higher level than Yi Guchen's. Unfortunately, Shui couldn't control the Shura sword intent, and Yi Guchen couldn't use it as a reference. Yi Guchen was also very interested in the other sword intent in Shui's body, which was filled with a deathly stillness and extermination. This was the reason why he decided to have Shui by his side. For a sword cultivator, sword intent was very attractive. "It's time to go out." Yi Guchen sighed, and left the lowest level of the 18 blood prison with Shui. Outside the entrance of the 18 Blood prison. After so many days of waiting, there were only 4 people left. Yu Li, Yu Shichou, and the red-haired ghost. We've waited for so many days, but the sword demon still hasn't appeared. I'm afraid he's already died. Lord Dark Magistrate, it's better to just close the 18 Blood prison, the red-haired ghost said coldly. Even Lord Dark Magistrate hasn't said anything. Why are you in such a hurry? Are you so afraid of the sword demon coming out? Ying mocked. The red-haired ghost snorted and didn't say anything else. At this moment, the sound of wind breaking suddenly came from the vertical black hole. Yu Li, Yu Shichou, and the other's eyes narrowed. In a flash, Yi Guqin and Xuan appeared in front of them. Yi Guqin, Yu Shichou and the other's gazes focused on Yi Guqin. This was because Yi Guqin's body was surrounded by an extremely thick bloody aura. This kind of aura was something Yi Guqin needed a few days to adjust before he could release it freely. You've already comprehended the Shura sword will? Even Lord Dark Magistrate looked at Yi Guqin in surprise. Yi Guqin nodded slightly. To the side, Yu Shichou trembled slightly and took a deep breath. Obviously, he also had a chance to comprehend the Shura sword will, but in the end, he failed at the last layer of the illusion. He didn't comprehend it like Yi Guqin did. Yu Shichou? Yi Guqin suddenly looked at Yu Shichou, and in an instant, attacked. The 4 people's expressions changed slightly, especially Yu Shichou. He didn't expect Yi Guqin to suddenly attack him. Yi Guqin didn't use a sword. He just released the Shura sword will, and a blood-red sword aura shot into the sky. In an instant, the sky seemed to be dyed with a layer of scarlet blood. The bloody wind howled, and the sky changed color. This was the power of the Shura sword will. Yu Shichou couldn't hold back anymore. The deep blue sword aura also shot into the sky, like a huge wave, and spread in all directions. However, although Yu Shichou's water sword aura was also very strong, it seemed to be slightly weaker than the Shura sword will. Boom! The 2 different sword auras collided, and a strong sword wave swept out in all directions. Even the cold wind, which had been howling all year round, was weakened by it. Yu Shichou and Yi Guqin both retreated at the same time. Their bodies shook, especially Yu Shichou. He actually retreated 1 step more than Yi Guqin. This shocked the red-haired ghost and the others. This meant that Yi Guqin, who had comprehended the Shura sword will, now had the power to fight Yu Shichou. He was even slightly stronger than him. It should be known that Yu Shichou's water sword aura had taken a long time to comprehend, and Yi Guqin's Shura sword will had only been comprehended a short time ago. Even with the Blood Lake's cultivation, his understanding of the Shura sword will was still far from Yu Shichou's understanding of the water sword aura. But now, he could use the Shura sword will to fight Yu Shichou without being at a disadvantage. After that attack, Yu Shichou's face turned cold. Why did you suddenly attack? Before, in Shanghe City, you tried to kill me halfway. You attacked me. It would be rude not to return the favor. Yi Guqin smiled faintly. But after that attack, Yi Guqin didn't attack again. He just wanted to test the power of the Shura sword will. He wanted to use Yu Shichou to test it out. Huh, no wonder it is an exceptional sword aura. Yu Shichou huffed coldly. Exceptional sword aura? Yi Guqin was confused. Yu Shichou looked at Yi Guqin, and there was a hint of jealousy in his eyes. It was obvious that he wanted the Shura sword will very much. There are different levels of sword aura. There are 3 levels: ordinary sword aura, exceptional sword aura, and creation sword aura. My water sword aura is an ordinary sword aura. The Shura sword will is an exceptional sword aura. As for the creation sword aura, that is 1 level higher than that. Only a true swordsman can comprehend it, Yu Shichou said, his voice full of jealousy. Although they were both sword auras, the difference between an ordinary sword aura and an exceptional sword aura was huge. Chapter 109. Hearing this, Yi Guqin was enlightened. He finally knew why Yu Shichou desired the Shura sword intent so much even though he already had the water sword intent. He also knew why the Shura sword intent that he had comprehended in a short period of time could compete with the water sword intent that he had comprehended for a long time. It turned out that the water sword intent and the Shura sword intent, One was an ordinary sword intent while the other was a peerless sword intent. They were not even on the same level. Of course, this did not mean that the water sword intent was not strong. It was just that the Shura sword intent was of a higher grade and more powerful. Ordinary, peerless, creation. These were the grades of sword intent from low to high. Of course, the higher the grade of the sword intent, the harder it was to comprehend. Yiguchen had paid a lot of effort to comprehend the Shura sword intent. He had even cut off his ego in the end. However, this had also given Yiguchen a direction. After the sword intent had reached great success, it would be the way of the sword. Different grades of sword intent would naturally be divided into 3 levels. Ordinary way of the sword, peerless way of the sword, and creation way of the sword. Of the 4 ways of the sword that he had comprehended in his previous life, the hard and soft way of the sword should belong to the first level, which was the ordinary way of the sword. The heavy sword edgeless, which was the edgeless way of the sword, should have reached the second level, peerless way of the sword. As for the all-creation way of the sword, which could turn all things into swords, it should have reached the level of the creation way of the sword. As for the selfless way of the sword, Yiguchen could not judge it. However, it should belong to the peak of the creation way of the sword, even surpassing it. I wonder what grade the sword intent that Xia Yubing has comprehended is. However, it is very likely to be an ordinary sword intent. Yiguchen tried to figure it out. Although the North River Sword King was also a famous expert in the way of the sword, if he had comprehended the peerless way of the sword, he should be even more famous. However, although the North River Sword King was somewhat famous in the Saint Origin dynasty, he was unknown outside of the dynasty. If a true expert in the way of the sword had comprehended the peerless way of the sword, his strength should be quite famous in the entire South Sky region. However, Yiguchen didn't look down on Xia Yubing because of this. After all, Xia Yubing had been comprehending sword intent for a long time. Her comprehension of sword intent was deeper than his. If they really fought, it would be hard to say who would win and who would lose. Seeing that Yiguchen was able to hold his own against Yu Shicho, the red-haired ghost's face turned even uglier. He snorted coldly and left. After Yiguchen and Yu Shicho exchanged blows, they did not linger. They immediately left. Xuan followed behind them. That's? Yu Li's gaze suddenly landed on Xuan. Because Yiguchen displayed the Azura sword intent just now and snatched away all the attention, Yu Li only now discovered that there was a little girl following beside Yiguchen. However, there was a trace of doubt in Yu Li's beautiful eyes. Yu Li frowned slightly as she watched Yiguchen and Xuan departing figures. Long silver hair, plain white clothes. Yu Li's gaze suddenly froze. She vaguely remembered that she had heard the Broken Sword Elder's words by chance. She is? Yu Li's body stiffened. Her gaze was incomparably shocked. As a netherworld magistrate and a spiritual bridge of heaven and earth expert, she actually lost her composure like this. However, Yiguchen wouldn't notice. After leaving the Chill Wind Hills, Yiguchen immediately returned to the sky-piercing mountain outside the Milky Way province's Shangha city because the old drunkard had promised to help him forge a defensive spirit artifact. As soon as he entered the old drunkard's forging cave, the old drunkard came to him. The first thing he saw was Xue, who was standing beside Yiguchen. Xue was a little scared. She curled up behind Yiguchen and tugged at the corner of his clothes. "Little Yi, when did you become a father?" the old drunkard teased. "Senior, please don't tease me," Yiguchen said helplessly. The old drunkard's gaze focused on Xue. His pupils shrank slightly as he revealed a look of surprise. "Senior?" Yiguchen raised his brows. "And nothing. Little Yi, this little girl is quite impressive," the old drunkard said with a meaningful look. Yiguchen knew that the old drunkard saw that Xuan possessed sword intent. That was why he said that. "All right, little Yi, this old man knows why you're here. The defensive spirit artifact has already been forged." The old drunkard took out a set of armor. "It's actually armor." Yiguchen's eyes revealed faint joy. Defensive spirit artifacts were difficult to forge in the first place. In addition, the cost was high. Hence, under normal circumstances, it was some shield-shaped spirit artifacts. As for armor, be it the size or the difficulty of forging, it far surpassed ordinary spirit artifacts. But in the old drunkard's hands, this did not seem to be too difficult a matter. There's quite a lot of crystal armor on the surface of that ice-fire dragon lizard. In addition, there are some ice-fire crystals. Hence, there are enough raw materials to forge the armor, the old drunkard said casually. Yiguchin picked up the armor. The armor was full of brilliant colors, as if it was made of ice-fire crystals. Crimson and dark blue radiance alternated on the surface of the armor. This armor can be considered a low-grade defensive spirit inscription divine weapon. It is inscribed with sturdy spirit inscriptions and self-healing spirit inscriptions. After wearing it, it will be of some help to you in controlling the heavenly sun Xianming fire, the old drunkard said. It's a spirit inscription divine weapon. This was really a pleasant surprise for Yiguchin. Activating the sturdy spirit inscriptions could make the armor stronger and its defensive power stronger. As for the self-healing spirit inscriptions, it could repair the damaged armor automatically. Of course, if the damage was too great, it naturally could not be repaired. Senior, thank you for your help in forging this ice-fire dragon lizard armor, Yiguchin said sincerely. After inheriting the taboo forging technique, you can be considered half a disciple of mine. This is nothing, the old drunkard said with a smile. Senior, don't worry. I will remember your instructions. Yiguchin cupped his hands. It's good that you remember. Now that you have obtained this ice-fire dragon lizard armor, you must be going to the 10 prefectures elite gathering. This gathering of geniuses will be a gathering of heroes. Be careful, the old drunkard said. Now that Yiguchin had inherited his taboo forging technique, the old drunkard naturally paid attention to Yiguchin. Senior, don't worry. Yiguchin stood straight, exuding a faint sense of confidence. With so many tricks and trump cards, Yiguchin believed that he could face anyone in the 10 prefectures elite gathering without fear. After leaving the sky-piercing mountain, Yiguchin also prepared to set off for the St. Yuan Mansion. The St. Yuan Mansion was the largest mansion in the entire St. Yuan dynasty and also the location of the imperial family. The 10 prefectures elite gathering was also held in the St. Yuan Mansion. The Sky River Prefecture was a few prefectures away from the St. Yuan Mansion. Yiguchin might need to spend some time on the road. When he passed by the Beichen Prefecture, Yiguchin temporarily left Shui Air in the Desolation City Inn and then went to the Sky Sword Peak alone, which was also the location of the sword-seeking steel. Chapter 110. Yiguchin activated the 9th generation Sword Master's emblem on the back of his hand, which was the green sword-shaped symbol. In the next moment, Yiguchin was transported into the 8th generation Sword Master, Yitianxing's Heaven Path Sword Realm. The last time he entered, Yiguchin was in the Essence Realm, and could only barely absorb 3,000 heaven-splitting sword souls. But this time, Yiguchin's strength had increased tremendously, and he naturally wanted to absorb even more sword souls. In the end, Yiguchin absorbed a total of 10,000 sword souls, and his body was finally full. If he wanted to absorb more sword souls, he would have to wait until Yiguchin broke through to the Divine Soul Realm. The more sword souls there were, the more powerful they would be. He was looking forward to the day when he could absorb all 108,000 sword souls. After that, Yiguchin returned to Desolation City and left with Xuan. However, Yiguchin suddenly recalled that he had snatched the immemorial sword token in front of Prince Yuani and Murong Ditian. Prince Yuani and Murong Ditian obviously wouldn't let go of such an important item easily. And they didn't look for him directly, not because they wanted to let him go, but because they were afraid that they would expose the information if they acted openly. If Yiguchin revealed the secret of the immemorial sword token, it would probably cause a huge commotion. This wasn't what Prince Yuani and Murong Ditian wanted to see. And they were sure that Yiguchin would participate in the 10 prefectures elite gathering, so they didn't take any action, but waited for Yiguchin to walk right into their trap. After figuring this out, Yiguchin pondered. If he participated in the 10 prefectures elite gathering openly, he would most likely be caught by the royal family and Murong clan before he could participate. And if he waited until he joined one of the 7 major forces, then both the royal family and Murong clan would be wary. After figuring this out, Yiguchin's eyes flickered, and he bought a disguise mask. This disguise mask was only an ordinary spiritual artifact, but with the activation of true qi, it could cover the face and change one's appearance. Yi Guqin did this to prevent the royal family and the Murong family from setting a trap for him. In the end, when Yi Guqin stood out and obtained the favor of some powers, the imperial family and Murong family would not dare to act blindly without thinking. Seeing that Yi Guqin had changed his appearance, Shui wasn't curious enough to ask. The only thing she liked to do was eat. Therefore, Yi Guqin sometimes felt that the person beside him was just a small animal that needed to be fed. However, after spending so much time together, Yi Guqin was still unable to uncover Shui's secret. After that, Yi Guqin and Shui left the Beichen mansion and headed towards the Saint Origin mansion. Several days later, Yi Guqin and Shui arrived at Donglin Manor. Donglin Mansion was one of the most prosperous places in the Saint Origin dynasty. Yi Guqin went straight to the largest city in Donglin Prefecture, Cloud Sky City. The reason why he came to Cloud Sky City was because the Heavenly Saint Chamber of Commerce was going to hold another auction in this city. The Heavenly Saint Chamber of Commerce's auctions had always been of high quality. Yi Guqin had attended one in the Beichen Mansion before and had also gained a lot. Donglin Mansion wasn't far from the Saint Origin Mansion. In addition, there was still some time before the 10-mansion elite meeting. Yi Guqin also decided to see if there were any good things in the auction. The Heavenly Saint Chamber of Commerce's auction was located in the core area of Cloud Sky City. At a glance, it was antique, richly ornamented, and incomparably exquisite. After paying a few hundred crystal jades, Yi Guqin and Shui entered the auction house. At this time, the auction house was already bustling with noise and excitement. It was obvious how popular this place was. Yi Guqin and Shui found a corner and waited quietly. At this moment, the noise of the crowd suddenly weakened a little. Yi Guqin heard many people whispering to each other. It's actually the Qin family's little overlord. He really came. Yi Guqin glanced over. A young man wearing black crystal armor walked over with majestic steps. Behind him were two guards in azure clothes. This Qin clan is really something. They have two little kings. Just this little overlord, Qin Batian, gives off an incomparably strong feeling. His brother, Little Spear King Qin Aoshi, is definitely even stronger. Nonsense. Qin Aoshi is ranked 8th on the Saint Origin Heaven Pride list. Moreover, it is said that he only focuses on his cultivation and doesn't care about the ranking. His true strength is definitely not weaker than the top 5. Qin family, two little kings? Yi Guqin thought to himself. When he came to Donglin Mansion, he had heard that the Qin family was a super family in Donglin Mansion. They had a strong foundation and were even stronger than the Murong family and the extinct Situ family. In the current generation of the Qin family, there were two Heaven's Prides. Little Spear King, Qin Aoshi, and Little Overlord, Qin Batian, were both outstanding talents with extraordinary strength. Especially Little Spear King, Qin Aoshi, who was known as the #1 Heaven's Pride in Donglin Mansion. In any prefecture, a person who could obtain the title of #1 Heaven's Pride could not be underestimated. For example, Yi Guqin was once the #1 Heaven's Pride in the Sky River Prefecture. Of course, the title now belonged to Xia Yubing. Although Qin Aoshi's halo was incomparably dazzling, Qin Batian was clearly no ordinary person. At this moment, Yi Guqin could feel Qin Batian's vigorous and domineering aura. He was clearly no ordinary person. Qin Batian directly sat at the front of the VIP seats. In Donglin Mansion, the Qin family's status was unshakable. Soon, a charming lady stepped onto the stage and began to host the auction. Yi Guqin had a strong foundation and possessed over 50,000 crystal jades. As long as it was not an extremely precious item, he would be able to obtain it. However, Yi Guqin obviously would not spend crystal jades carelessly. He would only buy what he needed. The next item for auction is a rare treasure medicine, the burning dragon fruit. A servant girl carried a jade plate onto the stage. On the jade plate, a fiery red fruit covered in dragon scale-like patterns appeared before everyone's eyes. This burning dragon fruit contains extreme yang qi and has a tempering effect. For cultivators who need to temper their physical body, it is an absolute supplementary treasure. Hearing this introduction, Yiguchen's eyes lit up. His marrow-cleansing scripture had already reached the small success stage and was in need of various tempering items. If he could reach the large success stage of the marrow-cleansing scripture, he could combine it with the body metamorphosis scripture to achieve the true indestructible diamond body of his previous life. If he added the protection of Luo Tian and the ice and fire dragon crystal armor, Yiguchen's defense would be somewhat terrifying. Unless he used a spirit attack, Yiguchen's physical body would be difficult for ordinary divine soul experts to shake in a short period of time. Just as Yiguchen was about to bid, Qin Badian, who was seated at the front of the VIP seats, said in a vigorous voice, 5,000 crystal jades. 5,000 crystal jades was a moderate price for the burning dragon fruit, but it was slightly on the low side. However, the strange thing was that although the price was not very high, no one else bid after Qin Badian bid. The charming lady on the stage also had a slight change of expression on her face. In every auction, as long as someone from the Qin family opened his mouth, no one else would bid. This was the power of the Qin family, the power of the two little kings. Just as the charming woman sighed and was about to bring the hammer down, a deep and youthful voice suddenly sounded. 7,000 crystal jades? The moment these words came out, everyone was stunned. Chapter 111. What shocked them wasn't Yiguchen's bid. It was the fact that he dared to snatch food from the tiger's mouth and compete with the little tyrant. This was something that had never happened before. Everyone in the auction hall, including the lady on the stage, turned to look at the person who spoke. Yiguchen had already disguised himself with a mask and looked like an ordinary young man. When Xuan saw so many people staring at them, a trace of panic appeared in her big eyes. Her small hands clutched the corner of Yiguchen's clothes tightly. Qin Baishan's gaze also turned to Yiguchen. In an instant, Yiguchen could vaguely feel a wave of pressure. Qin Baishan's gaze was as cold as a blade, carrying with it a sense of aggression. The little tyrant Qin Baishan's personality was just like his name. He was incomparably domineering and powerful. In addition, he had the #1 genius brother and a powerful background. Due to these various reasons, Qin Baishan's personality was boundlessly domineering. In the Donglin mansion, no one dared to provoke him. It was also because of this that when Yiguchen opened his mouth to bid, Qin Badian felt very strange. It had been a long time since he had the experience of competing with others. However, facing Qin Baishan's gaze, Yiguchen acted as if he didn't hear anything. 8,000 crystal jades? Qin Baishan's tone was heavy as he spoke. 9,000 crystal jades? Yiguchen casually said. The moment these words came out, it attracted a wave of bewilderment from the crowd. If Yiguchen's first bid was unintentional, then this time, Yiguchen clearly wanted to compete with Qin Badian for the fiery dragon fruit. Who is that young man? Why have I never seen him before? He actually has the guts to compete with Qin Badian. I'm afraid he's not from our Donglin mansion. Tisk Hiske, that brat is going to be miserable. With the little tyrant's personality, he definitely won't let him off. The surrounding crowd's gazes were filled with surprise, confusion, and schadenfreude. Facing these gazes, Yiguchen ignored them, as if he didn't hear anything. I'm Qin Badian of the Qin clan. May I know the name of this brother? Qin Baishan's tone was extremely gloomy as he asked. Although he had a domineering personality, he wasn't an idiot. Therefore, he was testing Yiguchen's background. If Yiguchen really had some sort of background, he still had some leeway. A nameless person is not worth mentioning. Yiguchen's tone was as calm as ever. It was precisely this tone that caused Qin Badian to feel even more displeased. It was as if Yiguchen had never placed him in his eyes. All right, I'll pay 10,000 crystal jades. Qin Badian raised his voice. 11,000, Yiguchen replied calmly. Qin Baishan's personality had always been tyrannical. When had he ever been provoked in such a manner? The corners of his eyes twitched as he clenched his fists tightly. Qin Badian didn't bid any further as he stared coldly at Yiguchen. Feeling Qin Baishan's aura that was akin to a dormant dragon, the surrounding crowd cast pitiful gazes at Yiguchen. What was the use of obtaining the burning dragon fruit if he angered the little tyrant? In the end, he would still be beaten up and robbed of the burning dragon fruit. This was the thought in everyone's mind. Yiguchin didn't mind as he closed his eyes and rested. This kind of bearing caused some people to be convinced. Following that, other decent auction items appeared as well. However, to Yiguchin, they didn't have much of an attraction. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid everyone will have to pay attention to this auction item because it's a spiritual grade sword technique. As if sensing that the atmosphere was a little weak, the charming lady immediately took out an eye-catching auction item. It's actually a spiritual grade sword technique. Even in the 7 major powers, a spiritual grade sword technique is considered a core sword technique. To think that there's actually a spiritual grade sword technique being auctioned here. Many martial artists' eyes lit up, especially some sword cultivators. Their eyes were shining. Let's first explain this spiritual grade sword technique. If it's really a perfect and flawless spiritual grade sword technique, would it be auctioned? Some of the more level-headed practitioners opened their mouths and asked. The charming lady revealed an awkward smile as she took out the jade strip that recorded the spiritual grade sword technique and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, to be honest, this god-slaying sword technique is indeed incomplete. It only records the first 3 forms. But just the first 3 forms are no weaker than an ordinary spiritual grade sword technique. Is it only incomplete? Are there any other problems?" Some of the practitioners who knew the rules of the auction house doubtfully asked. There are indeed restrictions to cultivating the god-slaying sword technique. Firstly, the god-slaying sword technique consumes a lot of true chi. With a chi C of less than 10 feet, I'm afraid that it can only be used a few times. Secondly, the god-slaying sword technique is a sword of slaughter, with an extremely heavy baleful aura. Accompanying the sword technique will create a murderous illusion that can affect one's mind. The charming lady's expression was a little awkward. Hearing these words, the majority of the practitioners who had fiery gazes in the auction house lost their interest. It was fine if it was incomplete, but the consumption of true chi was actually so severe. A chi C of more than 10 feet. That was something that only those who were favored by the heavens could possess. How many of the people present were favored by the heavens? Not to mention this, when using the sword technique, it would create an illusion that would erode one's mind. In other words, if one were to cultivate this sword technique, one would accidentally go berserk and become a lunatic who only knows how to kill, right? A practitioner asked. I guess you can understand it that way. The charming lady said bitterly. In fact, she also knew that the spiritual grade sword technique was just a gimmick. The god-slaying sword technique was something that an elder of the Heavenly Saints Chamber of Commerce had accidentally obtained while training in the Heavenly Wasteland Plains. After handing it over to a sword cultivator elder of the Heavenly Saints Chamber of Commerce to cultivate, that elder's eyes turned blood red, as if he had gone mad. At this point, no one dared to cultivate the god-slaying sword technique, so the Heavenly Saints Chamber of Commerce took it out for auction. The people present were not fools. They all understood that if it was a truly perfect spiritual grade sword technique, the Heavenly Saints Chamber of Commerce would not take it out for auction. Therefore, after this, the heated auction house cooled down. I bid 30,000 crystal jades. Qin Batian opened his mouth again. Although he did not cultivate sword techniques, there were sword cultivators in his family. Moreover, it could enrich the Qin family's martial arts collection. With Qin Baishan's words and the many restrictions of this sword technique, no one dared to raise the price. At this moment, Yiguchin's voice rang out again. 35,000. You brat? Qin Batian stood up, and a powerful aura pressed down on Yiguchin. Yiguchin raised his eyelids slightly, but he did not show any fear. Young Master Qin, this is the Heavenly Saints Chamber of Commerce's auction house. Please abide by the rules. The charming lady said seriously. Although the Qin family was strong, the Heavenly Saints Chamber of Commerce was backed by the Saint Origin dynasty's royal family. They were not pushovers. 40,000? Qin Batian gritted his teeth. 44,000. Yiguchin did not even raise his eyebrows. This was all he had. 50,000. Qin Baishan's eyes were bloodshot. He was really angry. 50,000 crystal jades was not much to a superfamily, but to Qin Batian, it was not a small sum. After all, the entire family's resources could not be used by him alone. Yi Guqin frowned and did not raise the price again. However, this god-slaying sword technique was something that Yi Guqin must obtain. Whether it was the consumption of true qi or the killing illusion, it was not a problem for Yi Guqin. His Shura sword intent needed to be complemented by this kind of sword technique to unleash its full potential. Therefore, Yi Guqin could not give up on the god-slaying sword technique. The charming lady on the stage was smiling like a flower. She thought that this sword technique would be sold at a low price, but Yi Guqin's bid reached 50,000 crystal jades. The charming lady wanted to hug and kiss Yi Guqin. Good brat. Qin Batian suppressed his anger. In the auction house, he did not dare to act recklessly. Once again, the crowd cast pitiful looks at Yi Guqin. This was no longer provoking Qin Batian, but toying with him. With Qin Batian's personality, it would be hard for Yi Guqin to die even if he wanted to. Ignoring the gazes of the crowd, Yi Guqin's eyes were indifferent. After the auction, even if Qin Batian did not find trouble with him, he would find trouble with Qin Batian. Otherwise, how could he obtain the god-slaying sword technique? Chapter 112. Perhaps it was because of the conflict between Qin Batian and Yi Guqin that the atmosphere of the auction was heated up again. Ladies and gentlemen, the next auction item is a little special. The charming lady who was hosting the auction smiled and clapped her hands. An iron cage covered with a red cloth was pushed out by two maids. When the maids lifted the red cloth, a woman was revealed. However, unlike the women in the Saint Origin dynasty, this woman's skin was wheat-colored and she looked exotic. She was wearing an animal skin coat that only covered the important parts of her body. Her exposed slender waist and tight and delicate thighs caused some of the male martial warriors in the auction house to secretly swallow their saliva. This woman's face was also coquettish and wild. Her eyes were fiery red and she was looking at the crowd with resentment. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Fire Barbarian tribe in the land of 5 elements outside the Saint Origin dynasty. The women of the Fire Barbarian tribe have always been fiery, not only in character but also in bed. The charming lady smiled. Although she did not say it out loud, it made many of the warriors' lower abdomens burn with desire. Yi Guqin glanced at her and lost interest. He was naturally not interested in women, but the origin of this woman surprised him. The land of 5 elements was located outside the Saint Origin dynasty and was inhabited by the 5 elements barbarian tribe. It bordered the great wasteland mansion of the dynasty and bloody battles broke out all year round. Moreover, the 5 elements barbarian tribe had a strong foundation and the imperial family of the Saint Origin dynasty was unable to suppress them. Therefore, Yi Guqin heard that there were 7 forces stationed in the Great Wasteland Mansion all year round to fight against the 5 elements barbarian tribe. However, this was still too far away for Yi Guqin. Nevertheless, Yi Guqin was still interested in the land of 5 elements. There was a rumor that the land of 5 elements contained the 5 elements sacred item and whoever obtained it could comprehend the Tao of the 5 elements. Yu Shicho had only comprehended the water sword essence and he was already so powerful. If Yi Guqin obtained the 5 elements sacred item and comprehended the 5 elements sword essence of metal, wood, water, fire and earth, how terrifying would his power be? Of course, this was just a fantasy that flashed through Yi Guqin's mind. After all, the 5 elements divine items were rare and the 5 elements barbarians were obstructing them. How could it be so easy to find them? Slowly shaking his head, Yi Guqin dispelled the unrealistic delusion in his mind. This kind of woman is more interesting. 20,000 crystal jades. Qin Batian opened his mouth again. He deliberately glanced at Yi Guqin. When he saw that Yi Guqin had no intention of speaking, he snorted coldly and turned away. The charming woman looked at Yi Guqin with hope in her eyes. When she realized that Yi Guqin did not even look up, she sighed and prepared to bring the hammer down. However, at this moment, a clear voice like a silver bell suddenly rang out, "I bid a piece of celestial chalcedony." The moment these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. Qin Batian's face immediately darkened. Did he forget to check the almanac when he went out today? Two people were fighting with him, and the one who was fighting for the female slave of the fire barbarian tribe was a young girl. When Chin Bat-Ian looked over, his gloomy eyes suddenly lit up. The young girl was wearing a green dress and exuded a youthful and energetic aura. She had a delicate oval face, picturesque eyebrows, snow-white skin, cherry lips, and beautiful eyes. Even though her figure hadn't fully developed, it was like a flower bud that was about to bloom. Her neck was slender, her figure graceful, and she wore an emerald jade bracelet on her white wrist. Silver bells hung on her pure white and slender ankles, and they emitted waves of lively and crisp sounds as she moved. Such a youthful and energetic young girl, who was as fresh as a lotus flower, made everyone's eyes light up. The attraction of the fire barbarian tribe woman immediately shifted to this fresh young girl. Even the little overlord, who had always been overbearing, suppressed his anger temporarily and said in a gentle tone, "You are a girl. What's the use of bidding for the fire barbarian tribe woman? Are you trying to polish your mirror? Moreover, you are using a piece of celestial chalcedony." When the celestial chalcedony was mentioned, everyone was surprised. Yiguchen was also surprised. He felt that this young girl's background was extraordinary. Celestial chalcedony was also known as the king of crystal jades. The spiritual energy it contained was far from what ordinary crystal jades could compare to. It was more than 100 times more effective than ordinary crystal jades when used for cultivation. This kind of treasure was extremely rare. Even when Yiguchen helped Chu Shiqing obtain the crystal jade mine, there were no traces of celestial chalcedony. However, this young girl casually took out a large piece of celestial chalcedony. She was clearly not an ordinary person. "Oh, are you talking about white stones? I have them all over my house," the young girl said innocently. Hearing the young girl's words, everyone's face darkened. The young girl ignored everyone's reaction and widened her eyes. She pointed her slender finger at Chin Bat-Ian and said, "I, the righteous heroine, Su Jianshi, will not watch this poor girl fall into the hands of a tyrant like you." Su Jianshi's words stunned the crowd once again. Yiguchen was also stunned. This young girl was clearly inexperienced and wanted to help the weak. She didn't expect to bump into someone like Chin Bat-Ian. So it's an inexperienced girl. If you don't want me to bid for this slave, that's fine. Chin Bat-Ian narrowed his eyes and spoke in an inexplicable tone. You're really afraid of me?" Su Jianshi placed her hands on her waist and puffed out her budding chest with a proud expression. "However, I have a small condition." Chin Bat-Ian revealed a smug smile. "What condition?" Su Jianshi asked. "It's very simple. Don't you want to save that slave?" "Sure, I'll use you to replace her and become my slave. How about it?" Chin Bat-Ian laughed and spoke in a lewd tone. Su Jianshi's face was instantly filled with anger. She wanted to curse, but she couldn't find the words. Sigh. The surrounding people sighed in their hearts. With Chin Bat-Ian's personality, it was impossible for such a young girl to escape from his clutches. For a moment, many cultivators were furious, but no one dared to go up and save the damsel in distress. Chin Bat-Ian wasn't someone that anyone could provoke. Unreasonable. Anyway, I, Su Jianshi, am here today. Don't even think about touching that girl. Su Jianshi's chest heaved up and down as she gritted her teeth and glared at Chin Bat-Ian. "All right, since that's the case, why don't we make a bet? After the auction, you and I will fight. If you win, you and that fire barbarian girl can leave. If you lose, you'll have to serve me as my slave. How about it?" Chin Bat-Ian smiled craftily. "Sure, it's a deal." Su Jianshi ground her teeth and wanted to beat Chin Bat-Ian up. When the surrounding people heard this, they sighed. It was obvious that Su Jianshi had been tricked by Chin Bat-Ian. Who was Chin Bat-Ian? He was one of the two princes of the Chin clan. Although he was slightly weaker than his brother, Chin Aoshi, he was still a true genius with extraordinary strength. Su Jianshi might be beautiful, but her appearance couldn't be considered as her strength. With the auction coming to an end, many people were no longer in the mood to watch. They only wanted to watch the battle between Chin Bat-Ian and Su Jianshi. The auctioneer was also smart. After the auction ended, She immediately set up a bet on who would win between Qin Batian and Su Jianshi. Of course, 99% of the people bet on Qin Batian. The rest of them didn't like Qin Batian and pitted Su Jianshi. Chapter 113. Outside the auction house, Qin Batian and Su Jianshi faced each other. Yi Guqin and Shui stood in the middle of the crowd. The reason why he was here was because one of Qin Batian's 2 guards was staring at him. Yi Guqin wasn't afraid. He didn't plan to leave since the god-slaying sword art was still in Qin Batian's hands. "Ah, little lady, don't say that I'm bullying you. I'll let you have 3 moves first." Qin Batian stood straight with pride in his eyes. It wasn't that he was conceited. It was just that in Donglin Manor, apart from his elder brother, there weren't many people of his age who could contend with him. Don't cry and call me Grandaunt later." Su Jianshi snorted. Her origin ring flashed and a sword appeared in her hand. This azure longsword was like a cicada's wings with natural runes flowing on it. Faint spiritual runes could be seen on it. Spiritual rune weapon. Yi Guqin could tell at a glance that Su Jianshi had a spiritual inscription divine weapon. Moreover, it was a high-quality one. This wasn't something a disciple of a small force could casually take out. Su Jianshi stabbed out with the azure longsword. Sharp sword chi gushed out and instantly formed a sharp azure blade that whistled towards Qin Batian. Qin Batian raised the corner of his eye. He had indeed underestimated Su Jianshi. This attack could instantly kill a 4th Revolution Qi Refinement Realm cultivator. Qin Batian circulated the true qi in his body and infused it into the black crystal armor on his body. The black crystal armor suddenly released a jet black light, forming a jet black shield in front of him. The black crystal armor was also a spiritual inscription divine weapon. It's Qin Batian's obsidian armor. Although it's only a low-grade spiritual rune weapon, it's still very rare. The spectators whispered. Boom. Su Jianshi's sword chi was blocked by the black shield. "Didn't you say you'll let me have 3 moves?" Su Jianshi pouted. "I didn't move," Qin Batian said shamelessly. The spectators were speechless. At the same time, they were shocked. It seemed that this girl wasn't ordinary. The second sword. Su Jianshi attacked again, creating a beautiful sword flower. However, it contained a terrifying sword energy. Yi Guqin, who was watching the battle, suddenly raised his eyebrows. He sensed a familiar fluctuation from Su Jianshi. Could it be? Yi Guqin stared at Su Jianshi in astonishment. Su Jianshi unsheathed her sword with a dazzling and powerful sword energy. A light of wisdom circulated on her forehead. She looked around with the confidence of a heroine. Boom! Qin Batian was actually forced back a few steps. Although he appeared calm on the surface, the blood and qi in his body were already roiling. Even the obsidian battle armor was unable to completely block such a sword qi attack. This lass, where did she pop out from? To think that she has the battle prowess of a heaven's pride. Qin Batian grumbled in his heart, but on the surface, he smiled and said, "Lass, continue, all right." Su Jianshi tightened her grip on her sword, and then a strand of formidable true energy suddenly erupted from her delicate body. 8th Revolution Qi Refinement. When they felt this aura, all the onlookers gasped in shock. They looked at each other with shock in their eyes. Su Jianshi's cultivation was already at the Heaven's Pride level. She couldn't be very old, but she had such a cultivation. Yi Guqin wasn't surprised. A girl who could casually take out celestial chalcedony definitely didn't lack cultivation resources. What caught his attention was the item hidden on the girl's body. Phoenix Spirit Sword Art, 1,000 Feathers Sky Phoenix. Su Jianshi shouted as she gathered her true energy. The clear spirit sword in her hand emitted a dazzling sword light. Hundreds and thousands of tiny sword threads, like feathers, gathered together to form an azure heavenly phoenix. It's a minor move. It's a minor move of a spiritual sword art. Where did this girl come from? She actually has a spiritual sword art. Su Jianshi's attack shocked everyone once again. The standard to measure a genius sword cultivator was to see if they had cultivated a spiritual sword art to lesser mastery. Clearly, Su Jianshi had done it. Damn it. Qin Baishan's expression changed drastically. There was no way he could withstand a minor move of a spiritual sword art. Even if he had a low-grade divine artifact and the obsidian armor, it wouldn't be enough. Qin Baishan's origin ring flashed and a flaming saber appeared in his hand. Scorching Sun Saber Art, Fiery Demon Slash. Qin Batian also unleashed his true energy. He was a grade lower than Su Jianshi, at the 7th cycle of Qi refinement. Boom! The blazing saber radiance collided with the cyan phoenix. The turbulent flow roared and shattered stones flew through the air. A groan came from within the dust cloud. Everyone's pupils shrank when they looked over. The one who was pushed back was Qin Batian. One of the two princes of the Qin clan, the little overlord Qin Batian, had actually suffered at the hands of a young girl. This was simply a dream. Tyrant, pay the price for your actions, Su Jianshi said with a delicate voice. Her sword didn't stop as she continued to attack Qin Batian. Although the young girl was pure and treated people like a blank sheet of paper, her sword cultivation wasn't weak at all. A spiritual phoenix spirit sword art in Su Jianshi's hands seemed to have a spirit of its own. Her sword aura was agile and graceful, as if a phoenix was dancing with her sword. Qin Baishan's saber art was similar to his personality. He walked the path of tyranny. However, his tyrannical saber art was actually suppressed by Su Jianshi's graceful sword art. The spectators were all dumbfounded. Su Jianshi's sword art was like a splash of ink painting. It was as smooth as flowing water. It could be said that even a sword Dao grandmaster wouldn't be able to be so agile and graceful. As expected, this girl's comprehension of the sword Dao has reached the enlightened sword heart realm. Yi Guqin's eyes were burning as if he wanted to see through Su Jianshi. The enlightened sword heart was a realm that countless swordsmen pursued. Even in his previous life, the sword demon Duguobai only comprehended the enlightened sword heart when he was 30 years old. After comprehending the enlightened sword heart, it didn't matter what sword art one cultivated. It was as if there was a mirror in one's heart that could reflect the entire sword art. Yi Guqin pondered. If he wanted to comprehend the enlightened sword heart, he would have to wait until the seed of the sword heart in his heart sprouted. But this girl had comprehended the enlightened sword heart at such a young age. This was what shocked Yi Guqin. This world truly didn't lack sword Dao geniuses. On the stage, Qin Batian was completely suppressed by Su Jianshi. Although he had the obsidian battle armor, there were wounds on his arms and face. Although the spectators didn't show it on their faces, they were secretly delighted. Even the tyrannical Qin Batian was in such a sorry state. Damn it. Girl, are you trying to overturn the heavens? Qin Batian, who was firmly suppressed, was also enraged. However, it was a pity that it was impossible for him to turn the situation around by himself. Azure-clothed guards, attack! Qin Batian shouted. In an instant, the two azure-clothed bodyguards that had followed him unleashed their auras and directly attacked. They were experts in the 9th cycle of Qi refinement. Chapter 114. The Cyan-robed guard was one of the Qin clan's elite guards, similar to the Situ clan steel guard. The captains of the Cyan-robed guard were all divine soul realm experts, but Qin Batian only had 2 attendants. Because no one dared to provoke Qin Batian in the Donglin clan, Qin Batian didn't need any experts to accompany him. 2 attendants were more than enough. But facing Su Jianshi, Qin Batian had no choice but to summon the Cyan-robed guard. Shameless. When the 2 green-robed guards entered the battle, all the onlookers reprimanded them with disdain in their hearts. It was bad enough for a man to bully a girl, but he even ordered the Cyan-robed guard to attack. Such a shameless person was truly rare. You don't follow the rules. Even with Su Jianshi's extraordinary talent, she couldn't face 2 9th Revolution Qi refinement cultivators at the same time. Not to mention, Qin Batian was eyeing her from the side. Ha, little girl, you have to understand that whoever has a bigger background is the rule. If I can capture you and bring you home, that fire barbarian girl is nothing. Qin Batian scanned Su Jianshi's delicate body. He had seen a lot of mature and tasteful women. Occasionally he would change his taste. A fresh and refreshing woman like Su Jianshi wasn't bad. Is shameless. Su Jianshi was furious. Qin Baishan's gaze was like a caterpillar, giving her goosebumps. Cyan-robed guard, capture her. Qin Batian sneered. The two Ninth Revolution Qi refinement cultivators attacked at the same time, using the Qin clan's martial arts to trap Su Jianshi in the middle. However, with Su Jianshi's cultivation and the enlightened sword heart, she could barely hold on for a while. The spectators sighed inwardly and felt a trace of shame. Although they didn't like Qin Batian and sympathized with Su Jianshi, they didn't dare to attack. Damn it! Seeing that the two cyan-robed guards couldn't capture Su Jianshi, Qin Baishan's face turned gloomy. Boom! After another attack, Su Jianshi's delicate body retreated. Her delicate face flushed red. Even prodigies had their limits. After fighting Qin Batian and the two azure-robed guards, even Su Jianshi's stamina was running out. Right at this moment, Qin Baishan's figure suddenly dashed out from the pincer attack of the two green-robed guards. Scorching Sun Saber Technique, Flame Dragon Strike. Qin Batian slashed out with his saber, as fiery true qi circulated around the body of the saber, causing the faint sound of a dragon's roar to ring out. How shameless! You actually launched a sneak attack. The onlookers all cursed in their hearts. As a proud son of heaven, he was simply shameless. He actually used a sneak attack on a young girl. Little girl, just obediently land in my hands. Qin Batian grinned. Su Jianshi's expression changed. She was a simple-minded person and didn't expect Qin Batian to be so shameless as to launch a sneak attack. Even someone like her would find it difficult to dodge this attack. Many onlookers closed their eyes as they could not bear to see such a tragic scene. Just as Su Jianshi clenched her teeth and prepared to go all out, whoosh! A sword shadow pierced through gold and stone, tearing through the air and emitting an ear-piercing sonic boom. Clang! Qin Baishan's sneak attack clashed with the sword shadow, causing sparks to fly. However, Qin Baishan's saber was directly repelled. A 4-foot-long sword stabbed into the ground in front of Su Jianshi. The sword was like mercury with traces of golden runes on it. The edge of the sword reflected a bone-piercing sharpness. This sudden scene caused everyone to hold their breaths as shock filled their eyes. Someone actually made a move? Who is it? Qin Batian was infuriated. He could have taken Su Jianshi down with a single attack, but someone had obstructed him. The crowd slowly parted as an ordinary-looking youth in a black robe walked over, holding the hand of a silver-haired girl. It's actually him. Many onlookers were shocked when they looked over. It was Yi Guqin. It's actually you. I haven't caused you any trouble yet, but you're courting death. Qin Baishan's eyes twitched. He'd been unable to restrain his rage towards Yi Guqin during the auction, but he'd placed all his attention on Su Jianshi, so he'd naturally put Yi Guqin aside for now. However, he never expected that Yi Guqin would not only not try to sneak away, but also directly make a move. You dare to play the hero and save the damsel in distress? Qin Batian was so angry that he laughed as his flaming true energy surged. On the other side, Su Jianshi was also surprised to see Yi Guqin make a move. She had never met Yi Guqin before, so there was naturally no friendship between them. I made a move because I left something with you, Yi Guqin said calmly. Something? Qin Batian was confused. The god-slaying sword art. Yi Guqin's tone was neither fast nor slow. You're courting death. Qin Baishan's blood instantly rushed to his head as his face turned red with rage. Contempt. This was a blatant disdain towards him. Qin Batian finally understood why the youth before him gave up after fighting for the god-slaying sword art twice. So it turned out that Lin Yun had already considered the god-slaying sword art as his possession. The spectators were also in an uproar. In the Donglin mansion, there weren't many people who dared to provoke the little overlord. Kill this brat. Qin Batian roared as his eyes blazed with rage. Schwer, wait for me here. Yi Guqin chuckled as he moved to face the azure-clothed guards. Sword come. Yi Guqin made a grabbing motion with one hand as his true energy gushed out. The meteorite's soft sword that was stabbed into the ground buzzed and trembled. Shortly after, It trembled as if it had a mind of its own and fell into Yiguchen's hand. Boom! The two azure-clothed guards executed the Qin clan's martial arts. A fist and a palm flew over. The powerful true energy brought about a gust of wind that scraped against Lin Yun's face. But Yi Guchen wasn't afraid. His current strength was no longer the same as before. If they were two ninth refinement realm geniuses, Yi Guchen might have some misgivings. But they were just two guards. Although their cultivation was the same, their talent, moves, battle strength, and trump cards were far inferior to a Heaven's Pride of the same level. Yi Guchen directly activated the meteorite soft sword's light spiritual runes. In an instant, Yi Guchen felt the meteorite's soft sword lighten by 30%. The speed of his sword had more than doubled. The afterimages of his sword flashed and transformed into thousands of light shadows. Su Jianshi was dumbfounded. She knew that her talent in swordsmanship was extraordinary and there weren't many who could compare to her. But Yi Guchen's sword was too fast. More than 30 swords in one breath. Su Jianshi's eyes were filled with astonishment. This was simply unbelievable. Boom! After a few exchanges, Yi Guchen forced one of the azure-clothed guards to retreat and vomited blood. And this was because he was worried that Yi Guchen's identity would be exposed, so he didn't use his signature swordsmanship. Leave these two guards to me. You go deal with the bully. Su Jianshi attacked again and helped Yi Guchen hold back the two azure-clothed guards. All right. Yi Guchen nodded and turned his sword to Qin Batian. Qin Baishan's eyes turned gloomy. Chapter 115. You, where did you come from? Qin Batian wasn't stupid. When he saw Yi Guchen attack, he knew that Yi Guchen wasn't an ordinary person. Furthermore, he might be someone from a major faction. I've said it before, I'm a nobody. Yi Guchen slowly raised his meteor soft sword and pointed it at Qin Batian. Hand over the god-slaying sword art, or I'll take it myself. Yi Guchen was very calm, but there was a trace of blood in his black eyes. Do you really think that my title as the Little Overlord is just an empty title? If I really use all my trump cards, do you think I won't be able to beat that girl? Qin Batian revealed a cold smile. Yi Guchen raised his brows. As a genius from a major family, he would naturally have a few trump cards. But so what? Yi Guchen wasn't afraid. He stabbed out with his sword without any superfluous words. His sword's path was clean, and its speed was as fast as lightning. At the same time, Qin Batian attacked with his blade. Flame-like true qi flowed on his blade and soared up, bringing with it a vigorous and blazing blade energy. None of the geniuses from major families were simple. Su Jianshi could indeed suppress Qin Batian, but if Qin Batian went all out and used all his trump cards, Su Jianshi wouldn't be able to gain much of an advantage. But because the 10 prefectures elite gathering was approaching, none of the geniuses were willing to reveal their trump cards. Qin Batian naturally didn't want to reveal all his trump cards. The blazing blade collided with the meteor soft sword, causing a burst of divine light. The meteor soft sword's hardness was controlled by true qi. In its hard state, its sharpness and hardness weren't any weaker than the calamity dust sword. Qin Batian felt his wrist tremble from this attack. He could feel a vigorous force coming from Yi Guchen's blade. How can this be? It's clearly a fast sword. Qin Batian was shocked. Obviously, according to Yi Guchen's previous moves, his swordsmanship should be light and agile. Only speed could not be defeated. However, Yi Guchen's sword momentum was incomparably heavy, like a mountain. Yi Guchen revealed a faint smile. He had the perfect physique and possessed the strength of dragons and elephants. In terms of physical strength, not many Heaven's favorites could compete with him. But in the next moment, Yi Guchen struck out with his sword once more. The sword that was originally as heavy as a mountain suddenly became like a nimble snake, making a sharp turn and stabbing towards Qin Baishan's face. Qin Batian was startled, and he hurriedly raised his saber to block the attack. With a loud clang, the saber emitted a metallic hum, causing Qin Baishan's ears to ring from the impact. Yi Guchen's sword momentum alternated between hardness and softness. Sometimes it was as overbearing as a mountain-splitting axe, and sometimes it was as cunning as a nimble snake. In this transition between hard and soft, Yiguchen felt a faint sense of familiarity. That was his understanding of the hard and soft sword essence in his previous life. Ever since he obtained the Falling Star soft sword, Yiguchen would try to comprehend the hard and soft sword essence whenever he had the time. Although it was impossible to comprehend it all at once, the feeling was becoming clearer and clearer. It could be said that Yiguchen was gradually comprehending the embryonic form of the hard and soft sword essence. Damn it, this brat sword path is so strange. Qin Baishan's face turned ugly. First, he was suppressed by Su Jianshir's graceful and nimble sword moves. Now, he was suppressed by Yiguchen's strange sword moves. It could be said that he was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. To think that he, one of the Qin clan's two little kings, a heaven's favorite, was suppressed by two unknown people who came out of nowhere. Although part of the reason was because Qin Batian didn't want to reveal his trump card, it was obvious that both Yiguchen and Su Jianshir were not weaker than him. In fact, they were even stronger. Am I seeing things? The Qin clan's little overlord is being suppressed? The surrounding martial artists all rubbed their eyes. First, he was suppressed by Su Jianshir. Now, any one of them could suppress Qin Batian. Since when was a heaven's favorite so weak? Brat, you're courting death. Qin Batian was enraged as his true chi surged. Scorching saber slash. Qin Baishan's saber slashed down like a flaming meteor, carrying a tyrannical saber aura. This was a spiritual martial arts ultimate move. Yiguchen's eyes were calm, but his pitch-black pupils were instantly devoured by the color of blood. It was a pair of blood-red eyes that looked as if they were about to drip blood. Eye of the Azura, activate. A terrifying baleful aura pressed down on Qin Batian. Furthermore, Yiguchen controlled it well and didn't affect the surrounding people. Qin Batian looked at the pair of blood-red eyes and his body stiffened. He could only feel the bloody light rushing towards him. Cruel, bloody, and hellish scenes flashed in his mind. Affected by this, the might of his imposing saber strike couldn't help but weaken by 30%. Yiguchen's sword vibrated as he activated the Qi-gathering spiritual rune. Vigorous golden true Qi poured into the meteorite's soft sword. Golden snake sword art, golden snake shadow. Qin Baishan's sword pierced out like a snake coming out of its hole. At the same time, the Qi-gathering spiritual rune was activated and a tyrannical golden true Qi poured out. Most importantly, it contained the power of the Azura. Boom! As the two clashed, Qin Baishan's saber was weakened while Yiguchen's sword was strengthened. There was no need to doubt who was stronger. Pucci. Even with the protection of the obsidian battle armor, Qin Baishan's chest trembled as he spat out a mouthful of blood. But before he could react, the meteorite's soft sword's silver edge was already pressed against his throat. The scene was dead silent. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. One could even hear the dry sound of saliva being swallowed. One of the two kings of the Qin clan, the little tyrant Qin Batian, was subdued just like that. Although Qin Batian didn't go all out, his reputation as a heaven's favorite wasn't something that could be suppressed by anyone. And yet Yiguchen did it. Who is that youth? How did he defeat Qin Batian? Could he be a heaven's favorite from another prefecture? But why don't I have any impression of him? He looks so ordinary. Many cultivators looked at Yiguchen in bewilderment. On the other side, the two azure-robed guards fighting Su Jianshir roared, "Let go of the young lord." If anything happened to Qin Batian, they wouldn't be able to live either. Su Jianshir looked at Yiguchen in astonishment. She could tell that he was hiding something. "Hand over the god-slaying sword art and I'll spare your life." Yiguchen's eyes returned to their original black color. Only then did Qin Batian regain his senses. What was that just now? An illusion? So terrifying? Qin Baishan's back was drenched in cold sweat. Yiguchen's blood-red eyes were like a nightmare that made him tremble in fear. If it really was an illusion, then it would be the most terrifying illusion that Qin Batian had ever seen. Hearing Yiguchen's words, Qin Batian reacted and sneered, "I'm not going to hand it over. What can you do about it?" "Do you dare?" Qin Baishan's tiger eyes shot out a provocative light. Yiguchen didn't say anything. The meteor sword slowly approached Qin Baishan's neck. Because it was too sharp, Yiguchin didn't use much strength and it cut into Qin Baishan's skin. Traces of blood seeped out from the wound. Qin Batian gritted his teeth and stared at Yiguchin like a poisonous snake that was about to devour its prey. The spectators held their breaths. Would Yiguchin really kill Qin Batian? That would be like piercing through the heavens. Chapter 116. Yiguchin's gaze was indifferent like a god. There wasn't a trace of emotion in it. He was the sword demon, born for the sword. As long as there was a sword art that caught his eye, he would obtain it. This was the obsession of a swordsman. Not to mention that the god-slaying sword art combined with the Azura sword intent could unleash a terrifying power. How could Yiguchin give up? Even if Qin Batian was a genius from a superclan, he wasn't afraid. As though he could feel the ice-cold tip of the sword piercing into his neck inch by inch, even a genius like Qin Batian couldn't help but reveal a sliver of fear in his eyes. Not many people were truly unafraid of death. Fine, I'll give it to you. Qin Baishan's eyes were spitting fire as he gritted his teeth. He threw out the jade strip with the god-slaying sword art. Thank you. However, in order to prevent you from taking revenge immediately, I will. Yiguchin chuckled. He tilted the tip of the soft meteorite sword and slapped it hard on Qin Baishan's face. Puchi. Qin Batian was sent flying. A few broken teeth flew out along with his blood. His face was red and swollen as he fainted. The reason why Yiguchin didn't kill Qin Batian was because he was hiding his identity and couldn't attract too much attention. If Qin Batian was beaten up, he would at most send a group of Qin clan's blue-robed guards to find him. But if he really killed Qin Batian, the entire Qin clan would send out their elites. At that time, Yiguchin would be forced into a desperate situation before he could even participate in the 10 prefectures' elite gathering. This wasn't something Yiguchin wanted to see. Qin Batian fainted on the ground. After obtaining the god-slaying sword art, Yiguchin turned to look at the 2 blue-robed guards. On the other side, Su Jianshi narrowed her eyes as she sized up the 2 blue-robed guards with a dangerous gaze. The 2 guards looked at each other. It was obvious that they weren't strong enough to keep Yiguchin and Su Jianshi here. In the end, the 2 blue-robed guards made the decision to take the unconscious Qin Batian away. Yiguchin wouldn't stay here for long in case the Qin clan came looking for him. He was about to leave with Xuan. Hey, wait for me. Su Jianshi called out. Yiguchin's footsteps paused for a moment as a thoughtful look appeared in his eyes. Soon after, he nodded slightly. The 3 of them left together, leaving the bustling Cloud Heaven city, leaving behind a group of cultivators who sighed endlessly. What's your name? Your cultivation isn't weak either. Although you're a bit weaker than me, your swordsmanship isn't bad. Do you have time to spar with me? Also, are you willing to follow me? I still have to go to the 10 prefectures' elite gathering and recruit more underlings. I'll establish the righteous alliance to root out the strong and help the weak. I'll be the alliance master in the future, and you'll be the vice alliance master. Along the way, Yiguchin suddenly regretted traveling with Su Jianshi. He had a cold personality and was a man of few words. On the other hand, Su Jianshi was filled with the energy of a young girl. She chattered like an oriole. Yiguchin did not reveal his identity. Instead, he used his name from his previous life, Dugubai. Su Jianshi chuckled. Dugubai, what a domineering name. However, won't you be beaten up if you use this name? Yiguchin felt a headache coming on. However, he had gained some understanding of Su Jianshi's situation. Su Jianshi mysteriously said, Me? I'm from the Lotus Village. I'll tell you. It's an extremely terrifying hidden force. Lotus Village? Even Yiguchin was speechless. It didn't sound like a hidden force at all. You've already reached the enlightened sword heart realm at such a young age. This was what Yiguchin was most concerned about. So you found out. As expected, I'm a heaven-defying martial artist. I can't keep a low profile even if I want to. This enlightened sword heart realm is a secret place in my village. The Sword Heart Spring. Grandpa said that I can't tell outsiders. Su Jianshi was originally proud of herself, but she quickly reacted and covered her mouth. Sword Heart Spring? Yiguchin's eyes flashed. Su Jianshi was able to comprehend the enlightened sword heart at such a young age. On one hand, she was indeed talented in the sword Dao. On the other hand, it was clearly related to the sword heart spring. Yi Guchen was suddenly interested in the sword heart spring that could help people comprehend the enlightened sword heart. In this world, there was no lack of treasures that could help people comprehend. For example, the enlightenment stone under the sword Seek Steel could also help people comprehend. If Yi Guchen could enter the sword heart spring to comprehend, it would definitely speed up the growth of the sword heart seed. However, no matter how interested Yi Guchen was, he couldn't make such an unreasonable request now. Moreover, Su Jianshi could casually take out the celestial chalcedony. This so-called Lotus Village might really be a mysterious place. Now that the 10 prefectures elite gathering was near, Yi Guchen couldn't go there rashly. He temporarily put this matter at the bottom of his heart. By the way, since we're both sword cultivators and we're both going to the Saint Origin Mansion to participate in the 10 prefectures elite gathering, why don't we travel together and exchange pointers? Su Jianshi was a straightforward person. After Yi Guchen dealt with Qin Batian, Su Jianshi subconsciously classified Yi Guchen as a good person. Moreover, with Xuan by her side, Su Jianshi didn't have her guard up against Yi Guchen. I couldn't ask for more. Yi Guchen nodded. Exchanging pointers with someone with the enlightened sword heart would be of great help to him. Putting everything else aside, Yi Guchen was already in the process of brewing the hard and soft sword will. He was just short of an opportunity to comprehend it. However, when he was exchanging pointers with Su Jianshi's enlightened sword heart would also influence him. Although this influence wasn't as great as comprehending the enlightened sword heart himself, Yi Guchen only needed a little inspiration. Apart from the hard-soft sword intent, Yi Guchen was also cultivating the god-slaying sword art. Although the god-slaying sword art was an incomplete version with only 3 moves, they were still powerful. The murderous illusions produced by cultivating the god-slaying sword art posed no threat to Yi Guchen, who had experienced the illusions of 9 lifetimes. Apart from that, Yi Guchen was also gradually comprehending some Xiantian sword arts as he practiced with Su Jianshi day by day. He was progressing towards a higher martial realm. Su Jianshi also gained a lot from exchanging pointers with Yi Guchen. One had to know that Situ Hongxue was able to comprehend a spirit sword art with just a few pointers from Yi Guchen, let alone Su Jianshi, who was exchanging pointers every day. On the other side, in the Qin clan of Donglin Prefecture. Qingyi Guard, did you find any traces of them? That brat of mine is dead, and that Su Jianshi must also be captured. Qin Batian, who had just woken up from his coma, couldn't suppress the anger in his chest. He looked at his swollen face in the mirror and wished he could grind Yi Guchen to dust. Young lord, the identities of those two are indeed a mystery. With such strength at such a young age, it's impossible for them to not have any fame. However, we can't find any information about them, said a Divine Soul Realm Qingyi Guard captain. You can't find out their identities? Did they pop out from a crack in a rock? Qin Batian said unhappily. Perhaps they aren't from the 10 prefectures? The Qingyi Guard captain guessed. Do you want me to swallow this anger? Qin Batian clenched his fists and the sound of bones cracking could be heard. Batian, who made you unhappy again? Suddenly, a calm voice sounded. Big brother? Qin Batian's eyes lit up. Chapter 117. A peerless figure walked in from outside the door. It was a young man in his 20s. His body was like a spear, emitting a sharp aura that shook one's heart. He was clad in silver armor and had deep-set facial features. His eyes were like torches, and his skin was as fair as a woman's. He looked like a silver god of war, his battle chi soaring to the heavens. Big brother, you're out? Qin Batian was pleasantly surprised. The young man before him was one of the Qin clan's twin princes, the Little Spear King, Qin Aoshi. He was ranked 8th on the Heaven's Pride ranking and the number 1 genius in Donglin Prefecture. His various halos made Qin Aoshi even more famous. What exactly happened? Seeing Qin Batian's miserable appearance, even Qin Aoshi's eyebrows slightly furrowed. In Donglin Prefecture, No one had ever dared to challenge the twin prince's reputation. Qin Batian then recounted the entire sequence of events to Yun Che. Oh, interesting. 2 unknown geniuses appeared. Although you didn't use your full strength, it's still impressive that they were able to suppress you, said Qin Aoshi. Big brother, do I just have to swallow this? Qin Batian was unwilling to accept this outcome. Don't worry. That young sword cultivator wants to obtain the sword art. It must be to increase his strength, and the reason he wants to increase his strength is obviously for the 10 prefectures elite gathering, said Qin Aoshi. In other words, they will participate in the 10 prefectures elite gathering? Qin Baishan's eyes flashed fiercely. Yes, but the 10 prefectures elite gathering is a banquet for geniuses. There are strict rules that forbid the use of the clan's power to deal with them. Just us alone is enough, said Qin Aoshi in an indifferent tone. This was an innate confidence. In Donglin Prefecture, he could be said to be invincible among the younger generation. He wasn't inferior to the number 1 geniuses of the other prefectures. In fact, he was even stronger. Because of this confidence, whether it was Yi Guqin or Su Jianshi, they were nothing to him. At most, they would only be a little troublesome to deal with. I didn't even use my full strength before I fell for that kid's illusion technique. If they really appear in the 10 prefectures elite gathering, I will definitely make them regret provoking me. Qin Batian clenched his fists. The Saint Origin Mansion was the largest mansion in the Saint Origin dynasty. At the same time, it was also the place where geniuses were born. The number 1 genius in other prefectures might only rank in the top 5 or top 3 in the Saint Origin Mansion. From this, one could see that the Saint Origin Mansion was full of talents. It was also because of this that the 10 prefectures elite meeting was set to be held in St. Yuan Mansion's Tianzong City. Heavenly Sect City was the 2nd largest city in the St. Yuan Mansion, second only to the imperial capital. It was large enough to accommodate hundreds of thousands of people. With the arrival of the 10 prefectures elite gathering, the entire Tianzong City fell into a frenzy. There were a total of 8 city gates, and countless cultivators swarmed in. These cultivators came from the other 9 prefectures to participate in the elite gathering. If he was lucky enough to be chosen by one of the 7 great powers, he would have reached the heavens in a single bound. Spirit-level martial arts, spirit-level cultivation methods, elixirs, secret techniques, spirit inscriptions, divine weapons, everything that one could think of. It was also because of the resources of the 7 major forces that they were able to attract the warriors of the entire Saint Origin dynasty to participate in the competition. Of course, there were restrictions to participating in such a competition. One's cultivation level had to be at least above the qi refining stage, and one's age could not exceed 30 years old. Even if one's cultivation level was high, their talent and potential would be greatly depleted as they grew older. There was no value in cultivating them. But no matter what, the 10 prefectures elite meeting was a stage for all the warriors of the Saint Origin dynasty to amaze the world. No one would miss this opportunity. At this moment, outside the Tianzong city, Yi Guqin, Shuang, and Su Jianshi sighed as they looked at the crowd that was as crowded as ants. It was indeed the 10 prefectures elite meeting. Almost all the talented warriors of the Saint Origin dynasty had gathered here. Yi Guqin and the other 2 had come all the way from Donglin Mansion. Other than hurrying along, they had also been practicing sword skills. It had to be said that practicing with someone with enlightened sword heart had helped Yi Guqin a lot. First of all, his comprehension of the hard-soft sword essence had reached a critical point. He only needed a little more opportunity to truly comprehend the hard-soft sword essence. The reason why the hard-soft sword essence was not difficult for Yi Guqin was because Yi Guqin had already comprehended it in his previous life. This time, he was just recomprehending it. Secondly, the hard-soft sword essence could only be considered an ordinary sword essence. The difficulty of comprehending it was different from the Azura sword essence. In addition, Yi Guqin had also mastered the first 2 forms of the god-slaying sword art. As for the 3rd form, Yi Guqin was still in the process of comprehending it. In addition, Yiguchen had also cultivated the horizontal lightning sword and the golden snake swordsmanship to the greater mastery realm and comprehended the ultimate killing moves. Currently, the Xiantian sword art was not difficult for Yiguchen to cultivate. What a grand event! Yiguchen couldn't help but sigh. When had there ever been such a grand event in the martial Tao in his previous life? I've decided. The 10 Prefectures Elite Meeting will be the stage for me, the righteous heroine, Su Jianshi, to shine. Su Jianshi's eyes sparkled. She clenched her fists and revealed a confident smile. Yiguchen casually asked, "The prodigies of the prefectures aren't easy to deal with. They have many trump cards, so it won't be easy to defeat them. Which prodigy do you want to fight the most?" Su Jianshi smacked her lips and said, "Me? If there's anyone, then it would be the sword school's Yiguchen." Yiguchen's expression froze as he looked at Su Jianshi with a strange gaze. "I've heard that Yiguchen of the sword sect shattered the sword-seeking steel and killed Emojuechen of the blood saber with his sword. He should be a talented swordsman. Only such a genius swordsman is worthy of being my opponent." Su Jianshi gritted her teeth and glanced at Yiguchen. "Of course, don't be discouraged. Your talent in the sword Tao is not bad, only a little bit weaker than mine. Work hard and you'll be able to compete with Yiguchen in the future." Su Jianshi reached out her hand and patted Yiguchen's shoulder. Yiguchen's expression didn't change at all. When he sparred with Su Jianshi, he had only revealed half of his strength. Many of his trump cards, including his sword intent, hadn't been revealed. If he had revealed his Shura sword intent, then Su Jianshi wouldn't have such an opinion. Su Jianshi curiously asked, "By the way, who do you want to fight the most?" Yiguchen raised his sword-like eyebrows. There was a gloomy and cold light in his bottomless eyes. He wouldn't forget that during the Xia clan's competition, Xia Yubing had attacked him, a body refinement realm cultivator, with her chi refinement realm cultivation. Yiguchen had withstood that attack, but it had been very miserable. Before Yiguchen left the Xia clan, he had said that he would return that attack. It was almost time. Yiguchen hid the darkness in his eyes and smiled. It should be the #1 prodigy of the Milky Way province, Xia Yubing? Oh. Su Jianshi nodded. She had heard of Xia Yubing's reputation. She was a prodigy who had obtained the North River Sword Monarch's inheritance and possessed sword intent. Although Su Jianshi had comprehended the enlightened sword heart, she didn't have sword intent. Therefore, she wanted to fight a prodigy with sword intent. Yiguchen waved his hand. "All right, let's go in." Su Jianshi nodded. Chapter 118. Tianzong City covered a vast area and had 8 city gates. Although the city was usually crowded with people, it wasn't like the recent days where the city gate was completely blocked by the dense crowd. There were guards from the Saint Origin dynasty at the city gates to maintain order, and there were even life and death threshold generals guarding the city gates. Obviously, they wouldn't allow anything to go wrong. However, no one would cause trouble in Tianzong City at this time, because other than the imperial family, there were also experts from the 7 major forces staying in Tianzong City. Perhaps in the first few days of the 10 Prefectures Elite Meeting, there wouldn't be any big shots from the major forces, but there would still be deacons and inner disciples to conduct the preliminary screening of the geniuses. After all, there were only so many true geniuses. For those geniuses who had been famous for a long time, even the 7 major forces would have to invite and compete for them. As soon as Yiguchen, Su Jianshi, and Shui Er entered Tianzong City, they saw martial artists jostling shoulder to shoulder. The city was unprecedentedly crowded. Most of these martial artists were youthful and full of vigor. Their gazes were sharp, and most of them were above the chi refining realm. Even if martial artists below the chi refining realm came, they could only watch. "Look, that's the young genius of the Yang family, Yang from the Shengtian prefecture. I heard that he cultivates the Yang family's ancestral spirit level cultivation technique, Heavenly Sun Art. He has also refined a special kind of heaven and earth flame. He can burn his enemies with just a wave of his hand." A young man in bright clothes swaggered through the city, his body faintly vibrating with blazing energy waves. He attracted the attention of some martial artists. That's the disciple of the Di family from the Qing State Prefecture. He has extraordinary talent and looks like a dragon or a phoenix. Blood Hand Luo Cheng from the Great Desolation Prefecture is also here. I heard that he cultivates a demonic cultivation technique and can shake a spiritual inscription divine weapon with a single bloody hand. He's a ruthless person. As the elite meeting was about to begin, some true geniuses arrived one after another, and each time, they would attract a lot of attention. And these geniuses were no doubt the dazzling stars of the 10 prefectures elite meeting. Those ordinary qi refining realm martial artists knew that they couldn't compete with these geniuses, so they didn't think about fighting for fame. As long as they were chosen by the 7 major forces, they would be satisfied, even if it was just an outer disciple. Everyone, the 10 prefectures elite gathering qualification test is about to begin. Martial artists participating in the elite gathering, please proceed to the Tianzong Plaza in the center of Tianzong City. Even the most outstanding genius of your sword sex Talon's younger generation, Yan Wushuang, won't be able to deal with senior brother Xian Hao, Lu Tianying said with disdain. Maybe everything will be different after this 10 prefectures elite meeting. Chu Qingqi said with an inexplicable tone. The figure that split the sword seeking steel with one sword seemed to appear in his mind again. He should be coming, right? What's the difference? In terms of sword geniuses, the number 1 genius of the Beichen Prefecture, Murong Ditian, already belongs to my limitless sword sect. Yuan Mie is a member of the imperial family and will probably join the Saint Origin Academy. And the number 1 genius of the Milky Way Prefecture, Xia Yubing, has comprehended sword intent and is also a genius that my limitless sword sect will definitely recruit. But what does your sword sect's Talon have? Lu Tianying sneered and shook his head. Then let's wait and see. Chu Qingqi put his hands behind his back and didn't want to say more. In his opinion, if Yi Guchen could join the sword sect's Talon, he would definitely not be weaker than Murong Ditian and Xia Yubing. Why do you two have to be so hostile? It's just a qualification test. A charming girl from the Consonance Palace said with a smile. The group of people from the Consonance Palace were all charming and beautiful girls of different styles. Because the Consonance Palace itself was an academy that only recruited girls. I'll let you fight for the sword cultivators. As for the saber cultivators, there's an 80% chance that they will join my Sealed Saber Monarch Palace. Among the group of people from the Sealed Saber Monarch Palace, a muscular man in iron clothes snorted coldly. He was the 8th on the Heavenly Saber list, Iron Demon Jiang Cheng. The 7 major forces each had their own thoughts. Although the true ruler had yet to arrive, there were already surging undercurrents and competing words. Yi Guchen retracted his gaze. His current identity was the disguised Dugubai. If he wanted to reveal his true identity, he had to at least wait until he was chosen by one of the major forces. With the support of a major force, he wouldn't fall into a passive situation. Chapter 119. It's Beichen Mansion's Murong Ditian. He's here. Just as Yi Guchen was pondering in his heart, a sudden exclamation rang out. Not far from the plaza, the crowd parted like waves as a group of people slowly walked in. The leader of the group was a young man. His gaze was disdainful, and he carried a sword covered in bandages on his back. Indistinctly, an extremely sharp sword chi was emitted. His gaze swept left and right, as if he was looking for someone. Big brother, did that brat not come? Behind him, Murong Ming asked. With his personality, how could he not come? Murong Ditian's eyes were emitting bone-deep hatred. He slowly raised his left hand, which was missing a finger. This was the finger that Yi Guchen had cut off with a sword, and used it to snatch the immemorial sword token. Most importantly, Yi Guchen had kidnapped Situ Hongxue. After that, Murong Ditian did not receive any news about Situ Hongxue. Yi Guchen, everything is because of you. My woman, my immemorial sword badge, they were all taken away by you. If you didn't come, how would I be able to resolve this hatred? Murong Ditian deeply breathed in. However, within his eyes, there were traces of scarlet red. Obviously, Murong Ditian's killing intent towards Yi Guchen had already reached an uncontrollable level. This hatred would only end after death. In order to deal with you, I have been cultivating in seclusion. You must come. Murong Ditian muttered. Within the dense crowd, Yi Guchen glanced at Murong Ditian, then retracted his gaze. He and Murong Ditian would eventually have a battle to the death, but not now. Following the arrival of the number 1 genius of Beichen Mansion, some other famous geniuses of Saint Origin dynasty also arrived. It's Donglin Mansion's number 1 genius, Qin family's little spear king, Qin Aoshi, and Qin Badian. The 2 little kings are here. At this moment, another voice rang out. Yi Guchen looked over and saw a group of people entering the Heavenly Sex Plaza. There were 2 people in the lead, and one of them was someone he was very familiar with. It was Qin Badian. The other person looked young and handsome. His silver armor shone brightly under the light, making him look like a silver god of war. He had a sharp aura that shot up into the sky. Yi Guchen frowned slightly. He felt a faint sense of danger from this person. Clearly, the number 1 prodigy of Donglin Mansion was no pushover. Big bro, there are so many people here, how can we find them? The moment they entered the square, Qin Beishen's gaze scanned the surroundings. However, the entire Tianzong Square was packed with tens of thousands of people. There were even more people outside the square. It was extremely difficult to find the 2 of them. Qin Aoshi remained indifferent and did not show any signs of urgency. He opened his mouth and said, if the 2 of them are truly powerful, they will naturally reveal themselves. There is no need to waste time looking for them. Yeah, that's true. When the time comes, I, Qin Badian, will definitely reveal my full strength and ruthlessly trample that brat and that little girl under my feet. Although Qin Beishen's face had returned to normal with the help of the elixir, the feeling of humiliation was like a dark cloud that could not be removed from his mind. It's the number 1 prodigy of Sky Jade Mansion, Zither Fairy. Her beauty is comparable to Situ Hongxue of the Situ family. A beautiful figure dressed in pink walked over. It was an elegant and peerless beauty. Her beautiful eyes were captivating and instantly captured the hearts of many young male cultivators. It's the number 1 prodigy of Sky Xingtian Mansion, Ji Xiantong. As expected of a dragon amongst men. Look at his aura. A youth dressed in embroidered robes stood with his hands behind his back. His eyes shone with a divine light as his aura soared to the heavens. As the number 1 prodigies of each mansion appeared one after another, the atmosphere in the Heavenly Sex Plaza reached an incomparably heated level. On the high platform, the elite disciples of the 7 major forces were calculating in their hearts which prodigies were worth recruiting. Of course, the assessment had yet to begin. In the past, there was no lack of dark horses that had appeared in the elite gathering of the 10 mansions. Some of these dark horses' aptitude was not inferior to the number 1 prodigy of some mansions. Therefore, the 7 major forces were not in a hurry to send out invitations. Just as the entire Heavenly Sex Plaza was engulfed in a fiery atmosphere, the crowd suddenly sensed a powerful aura that covered the entire plaza. That's the prodigies of St. Yuan Mansion. The gazes of tens of thousands of people instantly converged on a group of people. This group of prodigies were all prodigies of St. Yuan Mansion. Each of their auras was extraordinary. Prince Yuani, who had fought with Yi Guchen, was also among them. St. Yuan Mansion was the number 1 mansion in the Saint Origin dynasty. In the past, the prodigies of St. Yuan Mansion had always been the most eye-catching in the elite gathering of the 10 mansions. There were even rumors that the prodigies of St. Yuan Mansion did not need to be ranked first. Even the 3rd or 4th place prodigies were enough to be ranked first in other mansions. However, Yi Guchen did not pay attention to any of this. In fact, he did not even pay much attention to Prince Yuani. His gaze landed on the last person in the group of Sky Prides. Compared to the dazzling prodigies of St. Yuan Mansion like Prince Yuani, that young man was too ordinary. He did not fit in with the rest of the prodigies. He was dressed in black, silent, and had an ordinary face. He was even blind in his left eye and wore a black eye patch. His other eye, however, was as still as the night sky. That person is... Yiguchen furrowed his brows. Who is that young man at the back of the group? He looks so ordinary. Could he be a servant of some prodigy? Some cultivators were puzzled. What do you know? Do you know who he is? He is the sword genius ranked second on the St. Yuan Heaven Pride list, Yuan Mie. What? That young man in black with one eye blind is Yuan Mie. How is that possible? He looks too ordinary. Many people were shocked. They had thought that Yuan Mie, who was ranked second on the St. Yuan Heaven Pride list, must be a peerless young expert with an outstanding aura. However, the young man in black with one eye blind was too ordinary. He was not eye-catching at all. Most importantly, he was the son of Emperor Yuan, just like Prince Yuani. I've heard some rumors. Yuan Mie was the son of Emperor Yuan and a lowly palace maid when he was drunk. Later, the palace maid was secretly executed by the empress, who is Prince Yuani's birth mother. Some people whispered to each other. Yiguchen's expression gradually turned solemn. There were not many prodigies that he took seriously, but Yuan Mie was definitely one of them. A sword genius who could leave his name on the sword Seek Steel was definitely not an ordinary person. Moreover, Yiguchen vaguely felt a very faint fluctuation from Yuan Mie's body. That was the fluctuation of sword essence. I'm afraid that Yuan Mie has also comprehended sword essence, but I don't know what grade of sword essence it is, Yiguchen thought to himself. Just as Yiguchen looked at Yuan Mie seemed to have sensed it as well. His eyes, which were as still as the night, turned to look at Yiguchen. Yiguchen quietly withdrew his gaze. That person? Yuan Mie's eyes were deep. Chapter 120. On the high platform, the people from the Limitless Sword Sect and Sword Sect Pagoda Forest shook their heads in pity. Yuan Mie was a true genius of the Sword Tao. As a sword cultivation sect, they naturally hoped to recruit such a genius sword cultivator. However, they all believed that Yuan Mie was a member of the imperial family and would eventually be recruited by the Saint Origin Academy. After all, the Saint Origin Academy was backed by the Saint Origin Academy's imperial family. Among the people from the 7 major forces, the disciples from the Saint Origin Academy were all smiling. In their opinion, Yuan Mie would naturally be under their command. Yes, the kid from the Shinta clan is here. Jiang Cheng's eyes suddenly lit up. A group of people with extremely tyrannical auras and savage auras parted the crowd. Their auras were incomparably powerful. The leader was a muscular man with a bare upper body. His exposed muscles looked like they were cast from iron, and his chest and arms were branded with red demonic runes. He carried a terrifying saber that was as tall as a man on his back. His square face, steel-like eyebrows, and his gaze was like an eagle watching a wolf, causing people to feel a chill down their spines. It's the Shinta clan of the Great Desolate Mansion. Their leader is Shinta Miao. Many cultivators retreated when they saw them, especially when they saw Shinta Miao. The number 1 genius of the Great Desolate Mansion, ranked 3rd on the Heaven Pride ranking, Shinta Miao, was famous throughout the Saint Origin Empire. If Yuan Mie was the most eye-catching genius among the sword cultivators, then Shinta Miao was the most eye-catching among the saber cultivators. Of course, Yiguchen, who had once obtained the title of Swordmaster, was as famous as them during his heyday. However, a series of unforeseen events later caused Yiguchen's reputation to fall again and again. In the end, he couldn't be compared to Yuan Mie and Shinta Miao. Shinta Miao was already confirmed to be a disciple of the Saber-Sealing Monarch Palace, which was why Jiang Cheng was so happy when he saw Shinta Miao. Sensing the fierce aura of the group of Great Desolate Mansion's geniuses, the other geniuses from the other prefectures furrowed their brows. The Great Desolate Mansion was close to the border of the Saint Origin Empire and was only separated from the 5 elemental land by the Great Wall. This was also the reason why the geniuses of the Great Desolation Mansion would often enter the 5 elemental lands to train and fight against the 5 elemental berserkers. This was also the reason why they had such a fierce presence and terrifying battle experience. In terms of aptitude, talent, and resources, the Saint Origin Mansion ranked first. However, in terms of actual combat experience, the Great Desolate Mansion ranked first. In the past, The geniuses from St. Yuan Mansion and Great Desolate Mansion had indeed surpassed the geniuses from other mansions. Yuan Mie, we must determine the winner of this 10 prefectures elite meeting. Perhaps the ranking on the heaven-chosen list will change again. Shintamiao's gaze locked onto Yuan Mie. With his strength, he didn't care about the other geniuses. Only Yuan Mie and a few others were worthy of his attention. Yuan Mie was a man of few words. He only nodded slightly, and there was no fluctuation in his dead eyes. As time passed, most of the geniuses from the 10 prefectures had arrived. On the high platform, Chu Qingqi stood among the group of people from the Sword Sect's Tower Forest with his hands behind his back. His gaze was constantly scanning the square below. "Senior brother, are you looking for someone?" asked a female disciple from the Sword Sect's Tower Forest. Chu Qingqi was puzzled and mumbled, "Did he not come? That should be impossible. He will definitely participate in such a grand event." "Senior brother, could the person you're talking about be?" asked the female disciple hesitantly. "That's right. It's Yi Guchen, the one who destroyed the sword quest stele with a single strike," said Chu Qingqi. After the incident at the sword-seeking stele, Chu Qingqi also reported Yi Guchen's matter to the senior management of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest. The senior management of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest would definitely attend the second half of the elite meeting of the 10 mansions. They had been paying attention to Yi Guchen for a long time. However, if Yi Guchen was present, Chu Qingqi would be the one in an awkward position. The female disciple bit her lips and said hesitantly, "However, I heard that Yi Guchen has evil intentions. He once plotted against his childhood sweetheart, Xia Yubing. Do you have evidence? Or did you see it with your own eyes?" Chu Qingqi asked with deep eyes. "Well," the female disciple looked embarrassed. "I saw Yi Guchen destroy the sword quest stele with a single strike with my own eyes. With his sincerity towards the sword Dao, how could he do such a petty thing?" said Chu Qingqi. "Senior brother, you're right. However, there's nothing we can do if Yi Guchen doesn't come." The female disciple lowered her head resentfully. Chu Qingqi was deep in thought. At this moment, the entire Tianzong Square was filled with dazzling geniuses. Su Jianshir's beautiful eyes sparkled. She was so excited that she couldn't help but want to show off her skills. Yi Guchen was very calm, as if he was waiting for something. At this moment, Yi Guchen seemed to sense something. His gaze moved slowly. In the distance, the crowd parted and a group of people walked over. "They're finally here." Yi Guchen sighed inwardly. Her long blue hair fluttered in the wind. Her face was as white as snow, and there was a cold arrogance about her beauty. Snowflakes fluttered in the air as she took light steps. Her pair of magnificent ice-blue eyes were like an ice goddess, proud and cold. She was like a proud phoenix that had endured for a long time. Finally, it was time for her to shine. "It's the #1 genius of the Milky Way province, Xia Yubing. I heard that she was plotted against by Yi Guchen, but in the end, she received the help of an expert and obtained the inheritance of the North River Sword King. She even has the legendary sword intent. Her strength is unfathomable." "Yeah, who is the North River Sword King?" "He's an expert who crossed the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. The inheritance he left behind is comparable to a super family. The resources of a super family are all used on one person. How strong is Xia Yubing? I don't know. Xia Yubing is unfathomable. She hasn't fought much, but she shouldn't be too far away from Yuan Mie and Shin Tumiao." With Xia Yubing's arrival, the entire Sky Sex Plaza was abuzz with discussion. Xia Yubing's experience was more complicated than the other geniuses. She wasn't famous and was shrouded by Yi Guchen's halo. Later on, she obtained the inheritance and soared into the sky, becoming the #1 genius of the Milky Way province. This speed of her rise shocked everyone. "Hey, your opponent is here," Su Jianshir said. Yi Guchen's eyes dimmed as he slowly exhaled. This day had finally arrived. Apart from Xia Yubing, the other geniuses of the Milky Way province, such as Song Daojun, Bei Dengue, and Chu Shiqing, had all arrived. Xia Yubing's arrival also attracted the attention of the 7 factions on the high platform. She obtained the inheritance of the North River Sword King and possesses sword intent. Our consonant's divine palace yearns for such a genius. A charming girl from the consonant's divine palace laughed. That's not true. A genius with sword intent should belong to a sword cultivation sect. Our limitless sword sect needs such a talent, Lu Tianying said. This time, Chu Qingqi didn't say anything. Who said that a sword cultivator must go to a sword cultivation sect? Our 3 imperial palaces can also nurture such a genius. Then our 9 profound sect can too. To everyone's surprise, other than Chu Qingqi, the other 6 of the 7 great powers all had the intention of recruiting Xia Yubing. Clearly, what attracted them wasn't just Xia Yubing's strength and sword intent, but also the inheritance of the North River Sword King. Chapter 121. Xia Yubing stood indifferently on the plaza. Frost faintly pervaded her body. Behind her stood 2 girls, one in green and the other in red. They were Xia Shishir and Xia Ying. Clearly, they had only come to train by Xia Yubing's side. Everyone looked at the beautiful girl with a face as cold as snow. Xia Yubing faced the crowd with an indifferent temperament. Suddenly, she said, as expected, he didn't come. When these words were spoken, the originally noisy Sky Sect square immediately quieted down. All the geniuses, including the people from the 7 great powers, turned their gazes towards Xia Yubing. They were curious about what she wanted to say. Everyone should know about the enmity between Yubing and Yi Guchen. In the Sword King of the North River's cave, Yi Guchen plotted against me in order to monopolize the Sword King of the North River's inheritance. In the end, I only managed to obtain the Sword King's inheritance with the help of the Starry Sword Pavilion's young Master Gu, Xia Yubing said with a frown. She seemed to be in a bit of pain. I didn't expect the Sword Master to have such a character. He's truly despicable, Murong Ditian continued. Indeed, he's a disgrace to the Sword Master's name, Prince Yuani agreed. Then what about the Sword Master? Did he come today? Shinta Miao looked around. Yubing hasn't seen Yi Guchen. Perhaps he really doesn't dare to come. After all, he's done such a shameful thing. However, Yubing didn't expect that he doesn't even have the courage to face it. Xia Yubing shook her head, seemingly disappointed. That's right. Is Yi Guchen still a man? He didn't even come to the elite gathering. Who knows? Perhaps he's scared. After all, Xia Yubing's improvement is so fast. Even if Yi Guchen recultivates and rises again, he probably won't be Xia Yubing's opponent. Many cultivators were whispering to each other, their voices incessant. These people are really... How can they be so sure? I don't believe that a swordsman who shattered the sword-seeking steel would do such a thing. Su Jianshi felt a bit indignant when she heard those unbearable words. As for Yi Guchen, who was hidden under the mask, he was very calm from beginning to end. Even though Xia Yubing spoke such shameless words, his state of mind still didn't fluctuate too much. All grudges would eventually come to an end. When the truth came to light, just how marvelous would Xia Yubing's expression be? Seeing the discussions of many cultivators, the corners of Xia Yubing's mouth faintly carried a slight arc. However, it instantly faded away. She said, before Yubing came to participate in the 10 Prefectures Elite Gathering, she said that after the Elite Gathering, Yi Guchen's reputation as the Sword Master will no longer exist. Unfortunately, Yi Guchen seems to want to be a coward, so Yubing suggests that we remove Yi Guchen's title as the Sword Master. When Xia Yubing's words were spoken, the plaza where several tens of thousands of people gathered instantly became deathly silent. Erase the name of the sword faction? Many cultivators looked at each other, unable to hide their shock. To a sword cultivator, the title of Sword Master was an extremely glorious title. If Yi Guchen's title was really erased like this, it would be a fatal blow to his reputation. What destroying the sword-seeking steel with a single sword strike? What cutting off Imo Juechen's arm with a single sword strike? All of that would no longer exist. This was a kind of humiliation that was difficult to erase. Xia Yubing's method could be said to be ruthless. I agree. Murong Ditian was the first to stand out. He was the #1 genius of the Beichen Mansion, so he naturally had the qualifications to speak. I also agree. I thought that Yi Guchen would have some courage. I didn't expect him to be such a coward. Was Emo Juechen's arm really cut off by him? I don't believe it. Wild Blade Shinta also spoke. He was the designated disciple of the Saber-Sealing King's Palace. Yi Guchen had killed Zhao Fengyang of the Saber-Sealing King's Palace and defeated Emo Juechen. Shinta instinctively felt enmity towards Yi Guchen. Indeed. I heard that the reason Yi Guchen was able to cut off Emo Juechen's arm was because he had the advantage of the sword-seeking steel. It can't be considered his own strength. Shinta words caused many cultivators to discuss. Who knows? Even destroying the sword-seeking steel was just a trick. It's not a big deal. Some cultivators brazenly said. With Xia Yubing's guidance, the entire public opinion leaned towards her. What do you all think? Xia Yubing's gaze turned towards the number 1 geniuses of the other prefectures. I originally thought that the sword faction should have some ability. I've always wanted to fight with him. However, it seems like it's a little laughable to treat him as an opponent. Donglin Mansion's number 1 genius, Little Spear King Qin Aoshi, had an indifferent gaze as he spoke. I don't know much about the sword faction, so I won't comment. Sky Jade Mansion's number 1 genius, Zither Fairy, smiled faintly. Since he hasn't appeared, then he doesn't deserve to be called the sword faction. A white-clothed youth with black hair said coldly. He was Yuanyang Mansion's number 1 genius, Mo Lin. The reason why he was so displeased with Yi Guchen was because the person he liked was none other than Princess Yuanyang. Princess Yuanyang was infatuated with Yi Guchen, and this was something everyone knew. This naturally caused Mo Lin to be extremely disgusted with Yi Guchen. Now that Xia Yubing was creating public opinion, he was happy to add fuel to the fire. Princess Yuanyang also arrived. She was dressed in a luxurious dress, beautiful and graceful. At this moment, there was a hint of worry and a trace of disappointment in her beautiful phoenix eyes. She was the first person to witness Yi Guchen's rise. In Princess Yuanyang's heart, she originally thought that Yi Guchen would once again soar into the sky like a blazing sun and leave her behind. However, Yi Guchen didn't participate in the 10 prefectures' elite gathering. Even Princess Yuanyang felt a trace of disappointment. The man she was infatuated with shouldn't be like this. What do you think, young Master Yuan Mie? Xia Yubing's eyes shifted as she turned to Saint Origin Mansion. Although Yuan Mie stood at the back of the Saint Origin Mansion's geniuses, he was still the number 1 genius of Saint Origin Mansion. Yuan Mie's deathly still eyes moved slightly, but he didn't say anything. He said casually, I don't think a sword cultivator who can destroy the sword-seeking steel is so weak. Yuan Mie had left his name on the sword-seeking steel, so he naturally knew that the sword-seeking steel wasn't destroyed by Yi Guchen as some cultivators said. It was Yi Guchen who truly had the ability to do such a thing. Xia Yubing's eyes dimmed as her expression changed slightly. Saint Origin Mansion was vaguely ranked first among the 10 prefectures. Yuan Mie was the number 1 genius of Saint Origin Mansion, so his words carried a lot of weight. Miss Xia, why do you need to ask that bastard? Yi Guchen once plotted against you in the Sword King Mystery Realm. Everyone knows what a despicable person he is. He really doesn't deserve the title of Sword Master. Suddenly, Prince Yuani stood out. Although he was smiling, his tone was very sharp and vicious. Yi Guchen had once seized an immemorial sword token, so Prince Yuani naturally wanted to target him. He and Murong Ditian had already set a trap. Prince Yuani's men and Murong family's men were secretly lying in ambush outside the square. Unfortunately, Yi Guchen didn't show up, so Prince Yuani and Murong Ditian's plan fell through. Yuan Mie's deathly still eyes moved slightly as he stared at Prince Yuani. His eyes were filled with bone-deep hatred. Prince Yuani wore a faint smile as if he didn't notice it. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.